Places. Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. UIC.
Tell them we're gonna be stronger. Together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. It is a natural right for every human being to be free. Free, so free. So the government is there to protect you and me. UIC objective is to liberate the citizens from colonial bondage, them regulation, them taxation. Rob Jamaica, we independent. Be stronger together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. We're gonna be stronger together. Come, we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Nonpartisan Constitution.
UIC Liberty TV. Change you can trust.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. My name is Joseph Patterson, and today we're going to be talking about reform or replace. Now, I need to give an apology up front. We were supposed to have Dr. K'Nife on tonight, but we just got a message that he's no longer able to make it. So I'm going to have to fly solo tonight. We might have somebody else, but right now it's going to be me. So welcome to all of you. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm seeing where there might be some internet connectivity issues going on here. It says something is wrong. Let me see what's happening here. Good evening. Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Just give me a shout out. Let me know if you can hear me, please and thanks. If you can see me as well, let me know. Can you hear me? Everyone, anyone? Hi, good evening. Can you hear me? Please let me know that you can hear me. Oh, good, loud and clear. Wonderful, cool guy. Yeah, so tonight we're going to be talking about reform or replace. Those are two very important words, reform or replace. Do we want to reform the Constitution or do we want to replace the Constitution? Which one is more appropriate for us here in Jamaica? That's a very, very important question for us to ask ourselves at this pivotal moment in our history. We have gone for some 61 years now on the existing Constitution, and the leaders that have been governing our country for the last 80 years, the two major parties, they've been on the job now for about 80 years, from 1944 until now. And they're telling us that they want to engage in a constitutional reform process. But we, the people, have to ask ourselves the question, is it really a reform that we need, or do we need to replace the Constitution? So let's discuss the merits of replacing the current colonial constitution with the UIC's unique nonpartisan constitutional republic solution, which includes a 100% publicly funded campaign financing system, which we believe will eliminate vote buying and eliminate the PSOJ's control over our government. Now, those are two important elements you might want to zero in on: vote buying and the PSOJ's control of our government, because the current constitution allows that. It allows indirectly for the two major parties, with the help of the PSOJ oligarchs, to buy our elections, to buy our votes. It allows them to impoverish the people, dumb them down, and then use the power of the funds stolen from the people through the commercial system to then buy the votes of the very marginalized people so that they can continue to control our government, control our country, and by extension, control our lives. So tonight I want us to seriously consider the merits of replacing that system with what the UIC is providing. Or you might want to tell me that you would like to continue with the existing colonial constitution and just tinker with it, make some changes here and there, because you might think that, just making a few changes, it would work better for us. Now, I don't think so. I believe the current system is fraudulent, is wrong, is not good for Jamaica, and we should abandon that system 100%. But I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the matter as well. Let me pause to just welcome. I don't see my chat stream working here. I don't know why. Let me see here. But let me reload, see if that will work, so I can see your comments coming up. It's not coming up yet. I'm not sure why. Hopefully it will come up soon. But welcome. I see Dr. Jamaica does not beat the children online. Welcome. It says Jamaica should join the United States of America. We did not ask for this third world independence. That is quite hilarious. Somebody's asking that we join the USA. I do not want to give up or to, I don't want to lose my limited number of freedoms, nor do I want for Jamaica to become a part of a country which is run by mostly colonial values as well. So if anything, the Jamaica should be joining with the rest of the Caribbean and with Africa. But we digress. Welcome, Eunice Brown Knight. Good to see you on. Good evening. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Carl Spence, one perfect love to you as well. I see Jason Christie on. Big up, Jason Christie. Yes, let us like, share, subscribe, and comment on the live as much as possible. I see my chairman in the waiting room, so that's we'll bring him in. That is good. He's going to fill in, hopefully, for Dr. Knight, so we can have a fruitful conversation on the subject matter here. So yeah, man. So tonight we're going to be discussing the merits of replacing the colonial constitution with the UIC's unique model. And our model is described as a nonpartisan constitutional republic. And each of those words have very, very specific and important meanings. A key part of that reform or that replacement that we're bringing in is a 100% publicly funded campaign finance system, as opposed to what we have today, which is a privately funded system, which means those with the most money buys and control our government. So those people, a small elite group that we know as the PSOJ, that's an organization, but there are not everybody in it is a part of the club. So a small elite group, those with the most money, forms an elite group that buys both parties by giving them donations for their campaigns, and by extension can pull the strings as puppet masters. And those two parties work on behalf of their funders. They're funded primarily by the PSOJ oligarchs, and of course they also benefit from connections with the colonial powers outside. So they're funded through grants and other contributions within the governing structure to keep Jamaica as a part of a system that is controlled by the dichotomy of the local elites and the global elites. So tonight we're going to talk about that system. But before I go any further, let me just welcome our chairman to the stage and get his initial reactions before we go into a step-by-step analysis of the UIC's propositions. Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good to be on with you. It has been quite a while since we have been on together, hasn't it?
It has been quite a while. It has been a long time, actually. But it's okay, because the UIC is a broad-based organization with a number of leaders. We have some very dedicated and committed leaders, people who are ethical and moral and responsible. And as a result, we can shift the workload across the spectrum. We have people like yourself. We have people like Chase Neal, our VP out in Cornwall. We have people like Dr. Coretta Brown Johnson, who is in the Middlesex County.
Right.
People like Vice President Jasmine Powell, among others, not leaving out the First Lady and the Treasurer. and Dr. Harvey and Sister Janet and all of them. So we're a growing, strong movement where, and what I like about what's happening now, we seem to have finally weeded out all of those people who have ulterior motives and so on, and they're displaying themselves and all that kind of stuff. So we're good now. I think we're good now. We have the right.
Yes, we have the right mix. As a matter of fact, I was so proud today to realize that a fourth organization has stolen, emphasis on stolen because the UIC did not give permission, has stolen
Yes.
the substance of our party to try and use it to create theirs. Emphasis on
Yes, yes, yes. As a matter of fact, I was at a function recently. This was at the Marcus Garvey tribute that is put on every year by IREFM. And I just want to call them out and big them up. IREFM, big up for, I think it's now 30 years in a row that they have been doing this Marcus Garvey tribute. And I was invited for the second year in a row to participate. But this time I was given a little bit more of an expanded role. The last time it was a tiny fraction. This time I spoke for about 15 minutes in a on-stage presentation. And prior to that, I was on set for a few minutes there. Now, I was cut off in that earlier segment, which I didn't appreciate, but I fully understand the nature of television and outdoor, you might have issues and so on, and the microphones weren't working properly. But one thing I noticed is that on the set with Kabu, the two gentlemen that you had with her were busy repeating many of the UIC's talking points. So I was a bit worried because what am I going to say when they are presenting all of our talking points? Unfortunately, they did not give UIC credit. They didn't say, here are some very good policies, some very good things we could do. And I'm glad that the UIC has brought these up. Instead, they simply presented it as if it's something they just thought up or whatever. And lo and behold, when I went to do my 15-minute presentation, I did my presentation. They told me I only have 10 minutes, so I tried to contain it. It seemed I went over a bit. But the gentleman that came after me, he is the president of the Marcus Garvey Forum, the UNIA. I think his name is Stephen Golden. Now, he was even more articulate in presenting all of the UIC's policies as changes that we need in the Constitution. Now, again, unfortunately, he did not say, I would like to acknowledge that this came from the UIC and I'm just sharing it with you. It was shared as though it was something that originated from himself or somebody else, or So again, our message is getting out there. We know that the other two parties have also borrowed substantively in terms of our more minute areas like the 10-point plan. They've plucked things out here, plucked things out there, tried to recast it and reframe it a little bit. But the bottom line is, even though we've never been elected in Jamaica, we are significantly influencing the political landscape. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Chairman?
That is absolutely true, and I totally agree that without holding office, have significantly influenced the landscape. And we're even seeing that in governance. For example, the present debacle with the Sinister Six, where both parties are carefully couching their words and trying to control the narrative going out. It is only because they don't want to give the UIC fodder to claim for better governance, because they know that our claims are legitimate. They know that the stuff that we talk about, the changes that we want to make, are changes that every Jamaican will benefit from. Now, the key is to keep the people repressed and oppressed. So, keep the people from having something to hope for. Let's keep the UIC quiet so they don't get the UIC's calls for us to do better at what we do. So we're significantly influencing the landscape. We have them running scared, and I love that.
And the thing is, they control the media. So what they're doing this is strategic, right? So they have deliberately kept the UIC out of the media for the most part.
True.
And at the same time now, they're peddling our talking points gradually, so that the people are beginning to hear our talking points, but not from us, not coming from this new, vibrant, political movement and party, but rather they're hearing it from all these other players. So over time, when the UIC finally gets over the hurdles, the people will say, oh, we hear that already. And it will actually not sound new to them, and they may not fully appreciate it. And so the status quo will then be able to continue, because it won't be the first time that the two parties have presented new ideas and not fulfilled them. So,
Say
for
it again.
example, the current Prime Minister promised us vehemently while in opposition that if he's elected, we would have term limits, we would have fixed election dates, and even stuff about corruption is going to. So he has made promises and not fulfilled them. So the people are getting used to the idea. So if they can own our talking points and get people to become numb to it, then they will not have any hope, as you have said, and they will just settle for the evil that they know rather than the good that is before them.
True. If I can, before we go into the main topic, if I can just respond to Kirk here, Mr. President. We know for a fact that, Kirk, that you are not. As the president is about to demonstrate, the system is filled with corruption, and those persons love that corruption so much they want to keep it that way. And how they're going to keep it that way? They have come to the UIC under false pretense and has taken information outside of their purview, despite signing a binding agreement with the UIC that they will hold your information in confidence, and have taken it to further their selfish means. Rest assured, we are working on it, and other members have already reproached them for it and continue to report them because I have evidence of that. And feel free to do the same. Let them know that they have illegally obtained your information. They are as dishonest as the others, and therefore you will have nothing to do with them, and we'll be happy to see them dragged before the courts for what they have done. I have evidence that they have openly admitted to taking UIC information. Rest assured it will be dealt with.
Yeah, man, there are some very unscrupulous persons. I heard a person recently said that how can I trust you if you have stolen my information from the organization you were previously a part of and is using it to try to win me over to your organization? So that person asked a very good question, very pertinent one. Now, anybody who falls prey to this attempt would deserve the kind of association that they would have found themselves in, because it means they don't have the ability to do what Kirk is doing and others and analyze and rationalize and see that you can't trust a person who is willing to breach confidentiality, steal data from an organization, even steal the contents of the organization and try to pass it off as their own. So
Exactly.
That's settled. I think they have actually incriminated themselves in the public and should be judged by the public quite easily. But let's get back to our main topic now. All right. Welcome again, Ventus Brown. Good to see you on. Dr. Coretta, good to see you on. Ms. Powell, wonderful. Kirk, Wade Noble, big up. So our topic for tonight is reform or replace. Now, I want to assert at the very beginning of this conversation that we need to replace, not try to reform, the existing colonial order in council, which is called a constitution. Remember, it's an order. We were ordered by our colonial masters to institute a constitution that they framed for us. And here's the context of how they framed that constitution. They were the ones that abducted us, enslaved us, raped us, murdered us, traded us. And having done all of that, they turned around and prescribed a governance model that we're supposed to follow. And our then leaders, who really usurped the position of leadership, because what they did was to push Marcus Garvey aside. They colluded, just like they've now colluded against the UIC. The media back then, which was the Gleaner, colluded with the plantocracy back then, the PSOJ oligarchs, as well as with the colonial masters who were governing the whole process, and came together and they orchestrated the demise of Marcus Garvey and the establishment of two fake political parties, and used that to take over the control of our governance and then give us a constitution that they claim is a Jamaican constitution, which the average Jamaican didn't even have a partial say in. So the entire premise, the entire foundation of this so-called constitution is not of us. It is against us as a people. It was designed to divide us, which it has done very well. It was designed to corrupt us, which it has done with mass perfection. It is a system that was used to keep us in a form of slavery, to keep us colonized, and instead of making us independent, made us even more dependent. What are your thoughts, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, the dependency is great. Let us look on, firstly, to be clear, I do not believe that something so fundamentally flawed can be reformed. The very genesis of it, the language of it, the execution of it, and the maintenance of it makes it something that is irretrievably damaged and damaging. So I firmly, wholeheartedly believe that this colonial era constitution needs to be completely replaced. The process by which it came into being was nothing more than a con job executed by the plantocracy and those aligned with them, where they usurped the voice of the people and misdirected it.
Absolutely.
So we have to replace that constitution to truly reflect what our society was meant to be and to create a way forward for the next generations that will come after this document comes into force. Now, to repeal is defined as to revoke, to rescind. And that is massively important to us. We have to rescind this error
Revoke.
of governance. Revoke, sorry, this error of governance.
Yeah, have to revoke it, dismiss it,
Yes.
rubbish it.
Yes. And not trying to fix it.
We mustn't give it any credence. We mustn't the way they're going about it right now, they're treating the constitution that they have as if it's something we should respect, we should honor, we should appreciate, we should approach with kid gloves. No, we should approach this constitution as a dismal piece of paper that has been used to keep us in slavery in a form that is more conducive to the environment that the colonial powers found themselves in the 1950s and 60s. And so we need to rubbish it. But what I want to look at now is, what do we move towards? And Marcus Garvey gave us a fundamental paradigm around which we should design our new constitution, which, by the way, they're going to give it lip service, but I like to be very specific. In the new system that emanates from Garvey, and don't get, did not have it 100%, but the framework that he provides is a basis on which we can build. And the framework of Garvey, I see three particular words coming out of Garvey's insight and vision for the African. And, I speak of the African as the black man, wherever he is, whether it's in Jamaica or Canada or Britain or Africa or any other country. So the three primary words that kind of come out of Marcus Garvey's vision, which we 100% embrace, is number one, unity. So the system we advocate must be one that unites us instead of divides us. The second thing that comes out of Garvey is liberty. So the system must be one that liberates the black man, liberates the African, liberates the human being from being controlled by others and exploited by others. So unity and liberty. And the third word which comes out of it is empowerment. So the system we have must unite us in a way that liberates the individual and empowers the individual to achieve his or her full potential. What do you say to that?
Definitely. Liberty in its truest sense is not reflected in this constitution. We're not free to determine our own path because the constitution gives power to a set of persons who have no checks and balances, and you have no recourse or recall. And therefore, you're left to their mercy in determining against your will the direction they want the country to go and therefore take you along with it. That cannot be a constitution, a supreme law, if it doesn't reflect the hopes of the people, if it doesn't reflect the desire for liberty of the people. And in 1962, even though I was not there, what I like to say to people is that when the independence bell sounded, and it was summed up beautifully in a Louis Bennett poem, which I can't quote, I remember it, but I don't remember it word for word.
Yeah.
But I can imagine, in being from Westmoreland, in quote unquote the lowlands, how the people would throw down their cutlasses and abandon the cane fields. And you can see that stratification coming as a result, where the mulattoes, it's a real expression, forgive me, at the time, the mulattoes were stratified to be now the new land barons when Bakra Massa ran off. You would see now the indentured laborers who were in a better position of servitude. You can also see them now on the outskirts of the plantations. And in the hills, the rocky outcrops, are the people of African descent who were marginalized. Where I'm from, Betheltown, for example, is one of the first free towns in this area created by missionaries for former slaves. That's how settlement developed. The good lands, as you would call it, went to the merchant class and the plantocracy. And the leftovers went to the peasant class or the farmer enslaved. So none of
Not
this.
fully either, and not fully. So,
Exactly.
yeah, okay.
Exactly.
There are many of us who never got no land.
No, we didn't get any, period. Period.
Exactly.
There wasn't any.
Yes,
We just ran and squatted on somebody's property. And even then, the Constitution, the law did not give us a right of ownership.
right.
So definitely.
It's like serfdom. It's a form of serfdom that we had. And you don't have tenure, so you can't settle properly. You can't build properly. You can't live with confidence. You can't have proper generational wealth. But we're going to come back to that. As I move on here now to another fundamental premise for the UIC. So once we have settled the question of this new system must unite, liberate, and empower us, the overarching principle now of the governance model we're going to embrace begins with the understanding of what is wrong, what is a primary wrong in the current system. And in the current system, it allows the rich and powerful to buy the politicians and buy the political process and therefore buy the government. So the current system which Jamaica follows and many other countries around the world, and not because many other countries follow it mean it is right, it is just that many other countries have fallen prey to the global agenda of the elites who want to create a governance model that gives them the lever of control to be able to control the government, therefore control the economy, and therefore control the people in the country. So the system that they have is one where the richest among us gets to fund the politicians, and own the government. So the UIC, to fix this problem, have developed what we call a 100% publicly funded campaign financing system, whereby it is non-partisan in nature and structure, by ensuring that every candidate is funded, every qualified candidate, once you qualify, you are funded by given the same access to newspaper, radio, television, internet, town halls, and debates. And so now, whether you're rich or poor, you're not advantaged by your wealth or disadvantaged by your lack of wealth to be a representative of the people. But when you're elected, because you are not funded by the private rich elites, you now will have the freedom and the independence to speak up and speak out and fully represent your constituents, because you're not owned by the wealthy elites of the land. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Chairman?
That is very true. The wealthy elites have pulled our strings long enough. I particularly love the fact that the system that the UIC is proposing to replace the colonial system we have been stuck with removes all avenue for special interest to rule. What it will do, it will allow every individual to now take personal responsibility for participating in the process of ensuring good governance, of understanding governance, and installing good governors that work for the people. I see that doing these three fundamental things. And that is why I have such an appreciation for it. So definitely.
And can you imagine, it's we the people that's designing this for ourselves. It's not no foreign masters coming and saying, hey, see a system, you follow this. Is we have built this ourselves. And we have done this without $1 of taxpayers' money.
Now, and this is now compared to a constitution reform committee meeting in secret behind closed doors with several special interests, religious special interests, okay, sexual special interests,
Yes.
and then private sector special interests, all intermingled and married in one, this holy, incestuous, vile concoction that they will present to us as a constitution. You can imagine what will come of it with all the special interests in one room, brimming.
Exactly. And the bottom line is none of them appreciates what we're talking about here. They have lots of lovely language. And by the way, let me just say good night to all of you who have joined us. Ransford McLean, Lenward Duffus, Elsilda Smith, Wade Noble. Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. We're talking about reform versus replace. And the UIC is saying we're going to replace the Constitution, not reform it, because reforming it would be keeping the very ethos of what's wrong with it. So we're talking about one of the UIC's very, very, very fundamental reform or change or replacement. We want to make sure that it's a 100% publicly funded system. And this system will ensure that our candidates, the people who stand in front of us and say, I want to represent the constituency of Northeast St. Elizabeth, which is where I'm running as MP, and Mr. Wright is running as the Eastern Westmoreland MP candidate. We're saying your candidate must be able to run without having the backing of special interest, either the PSOJ oligarchs who control things with their money or any other group. We want a system, and we're going to put in place a system that preserves the independence of your candidate, your MP, to fully represent you, not a party, and not special interest or big money, but representing you. And we're saying, look at it. We, the people, are doing this. We have no access to taxpayers' money. All of this genius is coming from us working on your behalf. So when you donate $10 or $25 or $30 US or 1,000 Jamaican or 5,000 or 10,000, you are donating to us to actually work and represent you. And we have done that. We have taken the time to create a powerful constitution on your behalf to protect your interest. And so earlier on, I spoke about the three elements that surrounds the whole system: unity, liberty, and empowerment. And I've just described to you the 100% publicly funded campaign system. Now let's look at another important element. This is the UIC's position, we need a constitution that will that will place the people of Jamaica at the very top, and every individual citizen as true sovereigns, second to none and equal to all. This is very important. The current constitution places the monarchy, a foreigner, the very king and queens of slavery. The current constitution placed them at the top as sovereign over us, and their parliament, not our parliament, their parliament as their representative sovereign over us, and we are subjects and subservient to them. That's the current system. Think about it. Why would anyone want to adopt, embrace, and continue such a system for 61 years? Why would the two parties that is supposed to represent us, after 18 years of self-governance, after seeing how the colonial system works, why would they accept, embrace, and put in place and enforce a document such as that for 61 years after the previous 18 years. It tells us that they're not working for us. Now, let's say it was a mistake in 1962. After 5 years of it, why wouldn't they then use the opportunity to change? They didn't. What about 10 years after? They didn't. What about 15 years after? They didn't. What about 30 years after? They didn't. Now they're pushing because the UIC is on their heels, and they know that we, the People's Party, will be pushing the issue so vehemently that they have to try to capture the narrative, take it back, and they're going to give us the republic. But what they plan to do, Mr. Chairman, is to give us a fake republic. The UIC says, no, we want a real republic, one that places the people of Jamaica at the top, one that makes every individual citizen a sovereign person, second to none, and equal to all. What do you say, Mr. Chairman?
I say exactly that, Mr. President. But when you look at, and we call it a constitution because that is the common phrase to use. But in actuality, the document can't actually be referred to as a constitution. Because even if the document itself says that it is expected to be changed by whomever has the authority to change it. Over the past 80 years, we have had politicians tell us that it is difficult to change unless you have a 2/3 majority. Yes, it is difficult to change, but it's not impossible to change. And the 2/3 majority doesn't have to come from the same party. Exactly. Now, if they were doing something for the people that is genuine and true, I see 2/3 stepping up and saying, this is good for the country, so let us do it. But because they're all trying to control the system so they can control the wealth, as in the public treasury, and then use that to support their special interests, who then support them when they're out of office. Let's look at it. How many former commissioners have become leaders in various sectors, various private sector companies, despite their dismal showing as commissioner? All of them. Right? All of them. How many former prime ministers have gotten cushy jobs after leaving office? Most of them. And we can look at that and see it as very instructive as to what they do when they're in office. And of course, I can't get away from the illicit six. You understand? Illicit enrichment. That's a fancy term for using your office to fatten your pockets and your family. When we look and we see politicians, because they are seeing developmental plans ahead of time, they are annexing lands all over the island. Right? We remember one politician that was removed from his ministry and moved to the office of the prime minister. The daycare for the very rowdy and uncontrollable, the ones that obviously offend. He was moved because he tried to take over government lands for a private venture. Another one is still to answer question how he is now the owner of most of a parish where there are islands in the Caribbean here that they are not even the size of a parish. But yet he owns multiple acres, hundreds of acres in that parish. And it so happens that right now that parish is being touted for resort development. And if this constitution can't stop that, it continues to be part of the lie they tell. And the UIC's model will put an end to all of that. What is the first thing we say? Ministers will not be.
We soon come there. Definitely. So this is important to know, because what you're talking about is the fact that the current constitution actually facilitates corruption. When you take a government and you divide it into government versus opposition, and you incentivize both parts to engage in corruption and then cover for the other in various forms and shapes, you're embedding corruption. The leaders of the two parties and the two parties themselves, they know how the system works. And both of them are being funded by the same funding source. And they understand that if they play the game right, they'll keep getting their turns. Now, a part of the turns business is to keep the people feeling as if they have a choice. It's to give them the impression that you have a democracy, the impression that you are in charge because you can change. But you can only change to who they allow you to change to. Because remember, no independent candidate is going to get the kind of money that any of the candidates of the traditional parties get from the PSOJ oligarchs. No independent, which means they're not going to be able to buy as much media and buy as much vote on the grounds in their constituency. The typical independent candidate can't even travel the length and breadth of his or her constituency. The cost in gas, wear and tear on vehicle, time away from work, loss of income, it's just too much. So when you see an independent candidate, they're simply running off their mouth, to be honest with you, because they can't win. It will be very difficult for them to overcome the challenge of finding time and money and resources to build a campaign team. Like in my constituency, there are 121 polling divisions. For me to win my constituency, I must have a team of no less than 6 and preferably 12 in each of those 121 polling divisions to ensure the ballot box is protected for me, that the votes are protected for me. You understand? Now, who's going to pay for that? Now, with our friends in the other two parties, they have the funds to pay for it because they will get millions and millions of dollars from the PSOJ oligarchs to do that. Now, why would the PSOJ oligarchs pay for that? Why would they want to pay for jeeps, pay for buses to be cladded in the colors of politicians, pay for food and transportation, pay for salaries for offices and people to be set up? Why would any private individual running a massive company want to spend that kind of money? For the very simple reason that they know that when they pay for it, they own it and they're going to get it back in droves in different forms and shapes. So when people hear the UIC talking about we need to donate and own our own party, it's because we understand the system and know that if we, the people, don't buy back our own system by buying our own party, by owning our own candidates and winning an election and changing the constitution to now make it a truly free and fair and without fear system of electoral process, we will never have the kind of Jamaica that we want to have. But let me switch gears now and go on to our third point, Mr. Chairman. So we just talked about the need for the Jamaican people to be placed at the top, for individual sovereignty to be protected. Now we want to make sure that the constitution we have is designed to fully, listen carefully, fully protect the right of every man and woman to 3 things: to their life, to their liberty, and to property ownership. You'll always hear the UIC come back to these 3 elements: protecting your life, which is the right to your life, you having full and unequivocal domain over your life; liberty, which is the right to do with your time, talents, and resources as you deem fit, provided you're not infringing on the rights of others; and 3, property rights, property ownership. You might recall that the World Economic Forum, they want a system where you have no property ownership. Listen, the way to best define a slave is one who owns no property but is a property of somebody else, right? So we want to protect you, your life, your liberty, and property, so that you're not a slave. Now, this right must extend to the right to land, the land that is yours by inheritance, the land that is yours by birthright. So we want every Jamaican to be entitled to their family land, free and clear of any and all encumbrances, including property tax, which is why we're going to abolish the property tax. You cannot buy a product and pay taxes for it in perpetuity. If you have to pay taxes for your shirt every year, it means you don't own your shirt, you've rented your shirt. If you have to pay a tax every year for your car, it means you don't own the car, it's rented. And if you have to pay a tax on your house or land or property every year, it means you don't own your land. So the UIC is going to give you real tenure, real ownership, and transfer you from being a property holder to being a property owner. We are going to have a constitution that fully protects the right to your life, to your liberty, and your property. Your turn, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I was muted. Let me ask our viewers this question. If you do not pay your property tax, what happens to it? Tell us in the comment. While you're doing that, like, share, subscribe. You have that friend that you made recently. Introduce them to the UIC and ask them to introduce a friend. Right? For us to defeat the matrix that is keeping our message from being widely heard is the difference between you sharing and liking. Right? So now, if you don't pay your property tax, your land gets taken. Means you don't own it. It's not your property because somebody can take it. Now hear this. The plantocracy, the landowner, the land baron, Bakramasa knew that. That's why he made sure he owns his land. Right? Now here's what he will do for you. A single mother, 2 kids, trying to make ends meet. And under UIC government, she gets her land. No taxes, her land. She puts a structure on it. Humble but firm structure. Right? And her kids are sheltered and safe. It's time for them to go to college. She goes to her local bank and says, I own this property, it has this structure on it, it values X amount. So I'm going to borrow Y amount to send my kids to college. She gets money up front, she sends them to college. The land is security. She takes her time and she pays back the loan. It's time to go to university. She said, my land is now value Y amount. I'm going to borrow Y amount to send my kids to university. And again, she gets the money, sends her kids to university, and she pays back her loan. The kids graduate from school. Both of them graduated a year apart. One is a business major and one is a science major. And a year after working, they expanded the house. The land is now worth Y amount. And they decided that, we should go into business together. Let us be X and Brother Incorporated. Great idea, but where we going to get the money from? Mommy, we're struggling to start a business, We're going to tighten our belts for a few years and work that money. Mother gets a brilliant idea. I have equity in the house because I've paid off the loan. And what is equity, Sir President?
Oh, that's the value built up by virtue of you not having a debt anymore.
Boom. Remember, she paid back her loan and the house value has gone up. So her equity has
increased.
Gone up. Yes. So he said, you know what, I have a brilliant idea. I have all this equity in the house. Let me get a loan so you can properly capitalize your business. She does that. They start the business, and over a course of 5 years, they pay back the loan. Again, the equity continues to go up. The business was started, it was properly capitalized, and the business, it was a brilliant idea, and it took off. What was that? Generational wealth creation. So now do you understand why they don't want you to own a piece of land or a home? And why the UIC wants you to own land and home?
Absolutely.
That is the difference between us and the colonial parties.
They don't want you to be an owner. They don't want you to, they love when you're dependent on them, when you're hoping for a sheet of zinc, when you're hoping for a block or a goat. They don't want you to have the power of being a landowner, land ownership, having title to your land. You can take your time and build, If you want, you can build. If every Jamaican whose parents or grandparents or great-grandparents were slaves in this country, if every one of them at the time of fake freedom in 1838 were given a piece of land, equally and equitably with all the other former slaves, and they had that from then, 1838 until now, can you imagine how wealthy we would have been? But let's say it wasn't done then. But in 1944, when they gave us fake democracy, they said, oh, we're going to right the wrongs of the past. We're going to give you the right to vote, and we're also going to give you the land that we stole from you. From 1944 to now, massive generational wealth. But they didn't do it. So let's say in 1962, when we got independence, again, fake independence, but let's say it was real, and they gave us our land, what would have happened? We would have gotten much richer over the course of time, but it didn't. Now, what has stopped our politicians from 1962 until today, 61 years, what has prevented them from recognizing that, wait a minute, we have been begging our colonial masters reparation. In fact, they're just pretending. They just use that to fool us up. But they've been begging for reparation when they had the power to give reparation immediately. All the two colonial parties had to do to give us reparation immediately was to give every Jamaican family, indigenous Jamaican family, land, so they did not have to work and suffer and slave to try to buy a piece of land, to build a piece of house for themselves. They could have given them the land, and they didn't. So the UIC now, we're going to fix generations of problems by giving the Jamaican people land or housing free of charge, commensurate to the value of the land that they should have gotten, so that they can have that on which to build generational wealth. Now, bear in mind, the moment we said that, the two parties will begin to start to spin their wheels in their head. How can we take that talking point away from the UIC? And shortly after we said that, you heard one of them, I'll be very specific, Damian Crawford, now start to talk about land reparation. Again, they're just going to talk about it like they've done with many other good ideas, but they won't deliver on it. And we must not allow them to get away with this. We must make sure that we say to them, no, you fool us once, shame on me. You fool me twice, shame on me. And come on, you fooled us now for 61 years. We can't afford that for 80 years. So, Mr. Chairman, we, the UIC, are going to give the Jamaican people what is rightfully theirs, which is the land that was stolen from their ancestors. They're going to get that free and clear, and we're going to abolish the property tax so that no Jamaican who owns a piece of property in this country will ever again have to pay property tax. Now, property tax is particularly painful if you think about the impact on seniors. Just imagine yourself, Mr. Wright, you and your wife, you slaved and bought your property, you slaved and built your house on the property, and now you're in your 60s, heading into 70s, and your income level is dropping, which is normal because you can't earn at the same rate normally when you're older, but yet still your property tax is there and probably going up as well. That is insane. That is so stressful on a senior citizen. Maybe push them into an early grave, don't you think?
Yeah, very much so. And I can give you a very important example. I have relatives who are seniors and retired and own land. And when they tell you how much they pay for property tax, you have to hold your head. And I do think about when I get to an old age, my kids are not here to provide for me. They're not my pension.
Yeah.
Right? I've had the honor of raising them, and they now have the choice to go live their lives. I should be secure in creating a retirement plan because I do have the knowledge. I just don't have the financial wherewithal because the economic system is so turbulent. And it wasn't turbulent because, boy, I saw the system go as they tell us. No, it's turbulent because of poor decisions by our leaders that we can't recall or replace because, one, the system doesn't allow it, and two, the system has been hijacked by special interest money by the PSOJ, who was the plantocracy in the days of slavery, and have been using it to their advantage. Their companies get richer, their families get richer over the generations, and you will see them continually get richer because they're getting big government contracts, they're getting big government subventions, they're getting tax write-offs. We're not getting any of that.
Well, they steal your NIS money. They force you to pay into a scheme, the national insurance scheme. They force you to pay into it. And at the same time, they have monetary policies and fiscal policies that will erode the purchasing power of your money. So even though you're being forced to save, the rate of return on your savings is less than required to overcome the rate of depreciation in the value of your money, So your money isn't growing at any appreciable rate. And when you finally get that so-called NIS money in the future, it is almost as worthless as if you had saved nothing at all. And so the bottom line is the system is designed against you. And by the way, it's not poor decisions. They're making deliberate decisions to steal from you systematically by way of government-inspired inflation, by way of low wages, a structure of low wages in the country, a deliberate low wage structure in the country, and by way of excessive taxation, which is why the UIC's policies look at all of those dimensions. How do we protect your purchasing power? How do we cap taxes to protect you from excessive taxation? And how do we create a truly free and fair market economy that allows you to achieve your maximum potential and by extension, your maximum earnings? But let's move on now to the next element I want to talk about, which is the role of government. The role of government in the UIC's new constitution is that government must exist to protect your rights from criminals, both elected and unelected criminals, by enforcing objective laws which are applied equally to all citizens, regardless of their station, position, or financial status. While the Constitution itself must be designed to protect us from government. And this is very important. Many people don't understand that the primary role of a constitution is really to protect you from government, because government, given the opportunity, will become overbearing, will overreach, will become tyrannical. So you must have a constitution that protects you from the government and which forces the government to focus on protecting you from criminals, whether they're elected or unelected. Your thoughts, Mr. Chairman?
You see, that is the part I love and I look forward to, and here's why. If we look to one of our neighbors that is the closest thing to a republic, it's not a true republic, but it's the closest thing. That constitution tells the people that they must be protected from the government and give them the right to protect themselves from the government.
Absolutely.
And that is a big hint that when people come together, they get overzealous and overbearing. So the quote-unquote Jamaican constitution gives us no right and no protection. And that is why our politicians can act illegally. And we can go back and show them the illegal acts, but I won't do that. What I'll do is say this instead. When we look at the way our lives are in Jamaica, and we have a way of distancing ourselves from tragic events because it happened down the road and it didn't happen to us, we're fine by it. Not with me. Same knife will stick the hog, stick the goat. That is my expression. And one day it will happen to me. Would you believe that the state agent that acted in excess with your neighbor will do the same thing to you someday? Best believe it. Because they weren't corrected, they weren't checked. And a constitution needs to do that. And forgive me for saying, but it is true. We were an ignorant and illiterate group of people in 1962 because education was one of the things that was held back from us.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So this wasn't known. Now that we know, it is your duty, it is my duty, it is our duty to make sure that this counts.
But if you notice, Mr. Wright, if it wasn't for the UIC, the people would still get no education. We are the only body in Jamaica, out of all of the advocate groups and whatever, we're the only body in Jamaica that is carefully and significantly seeking to truly educate, because it's not enough to tell people about their rights. You have to explain to them what have gone on in the politics, how the system did work for disenfranchise them, because if the people don't understand what is really going on, they can't understand the highfalutin language now about reforms. You have to explain how they were exploited, where the points of exploitation were, where the points of corruption are, for them to know how to respond to it now. And the UIC is the only political movement. There's no other. None of the other splinter political groups out there, no matter what they call themselves, none of them have the intellectual capacity that the UIC has displayed in fully understanding, digesting, and presenting to the people what is going on for the people to have the knowledge necessary to now engage in formulating and endorsing a constitution that will protect their interest. And so we're way ahead. We're light years ahead of these other groups. And the current government and opposition, they are fretting. And that is why the PSOJ that controls the media houses are ensuring that the UIC does not get much, if any, presence at all on the public stage, because they're afraid of this kind of consciousness coming to the Jamaican people. They're afraid for the masses to wake up and say, oh, so that'll go on long time. The PSOJ oligarchs are fund them two party and use them for trickery, for people believe so we have options when there's no real option. Them block the real option from we and keep us tied into this. When the people get that understanding, it's game over. It's not time come, it's time up when the people get that understanding. Because now the people would have turned away 100%, not only from the green or the orange, but now that have seen the real purpose and function of the PSOJ oligarchs. They would now know not to trust any special interest group. Even the church is in on this. The church makes sure not to invite the UIC to their so-called prayer breakfast. They make sure the church groups, right, the big ones, the one who controls the talking, because we do have relations on local level with churches, like Pastor Chambers, for example. But at the big elitist level, those who control the microphone, they have also made sure that when they have their big functions, the UIC is not invited. We're not given a seat at the table. They pretend as if Jamaica only has 2 registered parties and completely ignore that Jamaica has an official 3rd registered party. All of them, the news media, the church, the PSOJ themselves do not refer to the UIC. If they're talking about anything, they focus on the 2 colonial PSOJ funded parties and they ignore the UIC. Yes, Mr. Wright, go ahead.
You see, since the UIC has educated me as to the destructive nature of special interest, I've always been against special interest, but I thought there was good special interest until I realized what the Jamaican context has to offer, where they're backing both horses in the race. In America, for example, special interests like the National Rifle Association, they back a particular party because the party support their point of view. Out here, special interests back both horses in the race, which tells you that they're insidious in what their plans are. So either person win, they get to carry out their diabolical act against the people.
Yes.
To show you how the rest of the world has developed. We all fell for the distractions, and I say we because including me, the destruction of traffic world. That wasn't the thing that was to learn from that. The thing that was to learn from that was that the country of origin of that company has a strict policy that extends across the world that there should be no special interest activity by corporate citizens. That was the lesson to learn.
Yes.
But we didn't learn that lesson. We were worried about who got the money. And not that special interest is so destructive that country banned it totally. We didn't realize that special interest money was so destructive that there's an actual country that barred one of its citizens from ever participating in the political life of the country because of his special interest money and the influence it brings. We need to recognize that they're weaponizing our money against us.
Absolutely.
We need to recognize that the Hearts and Isas and all these other money families are taking our hard-earned money and weaponizing it against us.
Yeah, I mean, they basically, right? I mean, where does the money come from to fund these 2 parties? It's by them underpaying the Jamaican worker. Somebody was saying, for example, in the comment here a while ago, was saying that they pay a very low property tax relative to other countries. And they were saying it in a boastful way, not recognizing what they're really saying here. While our property tax price, dollar for dollar, is relatively smaller than, say, what I would pay if I was still living in Canada, dollar for dollar, relatively speaking. But the person in Jamaica isn't earning Canadian dollars, right? They're earning a much lower wage. So proportionally now, depending on how poor you are, and there are many, Jamaica has roughly 3 million people, of which only about 1.3 million are employed on paper. Another 700,000 plus 740,000 are listed as unemployed. The 1.3 million that is employed, more than half of them makes a wage that is hardly worth talking about. In fact, 90% of the Jamaican population who works earns less than the poverty line in America. Go check the facts, 90%. So we're generally very low paid people, but our cost of living is very comparable. If you go to the grocery store and you pick up the normal amount of grocery that somebody in Toronto would go to the grocery store, if you pick up the same amount in this country, you're paying roughly a little more or the same as the person in Canada, but making less than half their salary. You understand me? So comparable, we're in a dismal position, and our people have learned to suck it up and live with it. But I'm trying to encourage us that it's time for us to stop living with it. It's time for us to say enough is enough. We do not have to continue to live on the margins in our own country while NCB and the other banks rake in billions from this economy, this same poor economy. They are raking in billions of dollars every year. It means that something is lopsided about our economy, that the average worker must be so poorly paid, but the average big business can make such humongous profits. We have to get to the bottom of it, and the UIC has gotten to it. Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
Let me point out, during the last election, they admitted to backing both horses in the race, which is $32.5 million each. That's what? 75 million?
One company gave that.
Yes. And at the same time, their workers were striking for better pay.
Yeah.
What could that money have done for their workers? And that's why I said they keep weaponizing our money against us, and you're perfectly correct in what you have said. Now, let's look at the cost of living in Jamaica. Even if it is $1, which it is not, that is our taxes. If you didn't pay that dollar in taxes and saved it, imagine what it would do for you over the life of the saving. Let's say you save it as a retirement plan from age 25 to 65. Huh? That's what, 40 years?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what that would do for you. So it's not that, oh, it's small compared to foreign. And you are correct. Value for value, it's disproportionate. Let me show you this. Our effective tax rate in Jamaica is close to 56%.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if you earn $1, 56 cents out of it goes in accumulated taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're left with $44 out of your dollar, 44 cents out of your dollar. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever your earnings are, all the taxes combined, both direct and indirect taxes, come up to 56% almost.
And what are you paying for? Look, in Canada, for example, they take in roughly the same amount in proportional taxes as Jamaica, roughly the same amount. However, in Canada, and I'm only talking about it because I've lived there, so I know first what I'm talking about. So roughly, both governments are taking roughly the same amount of overall GDP proportionally in both countries. But in Canada, you will hardly find a pothole road, at least in most of the main roads you're going to drive on a daily basis to get to. When I'm driving in Canada, the last thing I have to worry about is the road. So when I'm driving, I can be talking to my wife, I can be looking, if I'm trying to find a place, I can look for the place, and go on. In Jamaica, I can't do that. I have to fix my eyes on the road like I'm playing a video game, and you go shh, 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 and miss and try to, I get a drop into that one. And every time you drop in it, the dollar sign is running in your head because you know that has just been a cost. You don't know how much you're going to be yet. You just need one or two more of that. So you can't drive peacefully on the road. But in Canada, for the same rough tax equivalent, you have lovely road. If I have a problem at my house in Canada and I call the police, bang, in no time, they're there. In Canada, I don't have burglar bars on my windows and my doors. I have the luxury of forgetting to close my back door and go to bed. If I go out and I work late at night and I'm coming in, I am not worried about driving into my driveway at 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning or whatever. I'm not coming out looking over my shoulders. I am feeling fairly okay. I'm feeling like, okay, I don't have to worry about it. I can buy my grocery and I feel okay. I have lots of opportunities for my children to get work and whatever and so on. What I'm saying is, so what is the government doing with our taxes? What does $1 trillion thereabouts go to? We don't have good roads. We don't have good police. We don't have good hospitals. We don't have parks in our communities. We don't have playgrounds for our children. We don't have good libraries. We don't have. Why then am I paying all of these taxes if I'm not going to have? Because taxes is like any other thing, right? You're buying a product or service. In your private life, you buy private services. You go and you buy a house, you buy a car. When you buy the car, you get the car, you drive the car. You say, okay, I bought this car, I'm driving my car. Taxes, I am paying for security. Right now, all of my community is running scared. Just down the road here from me, they just shot a man. Along the stretch out there, they have broken into all 6 of the stores on the road. In Santa Cruz, the place is locked down early by 5:30. They're locking down because they're afraid of criminals. So I don't have security for the taxes that I pay. My road is falling apart. I don't have good roads. I'm afraid to go to the hospital or to the clinic. I'm afraid. The police stopped me the other day, and it's. I want to tell you what happened. It is so egregious. If I tell you, it's horrible, right? This is the country I live in, and I'm paying taxes for this. It's only because I want to be here so badly why I'm here, because there are better places in the world for me to live. And I can get up and go and live there. I can sell my property tomorrow. The market is hot right now. I could sell my house, my land, and everything, get a good penny for it, jump on the next plane, and go on somewhere else to go live. But I'm here paying my taxes and suffering for it, not getting the benefits of paying taxes. Every time I get my paycheck, there's NIS, NHT, HART, education tax, income tax, everything coming out of my paycheck. And I cannot, for the life of me, drive through my country and feel like, yes, there's my tax dollars benefiting me. If I drive on a good road, it's because I pay extra tax called toll in order to drive on the good road. I have to pay tax twice. I paid tax already, then I have to go pay toll again. I went to Marcus Garvey thing on the last weekend. The toll, I mean, it was like $3,000, right? After I paid taxes already to drive on my own road to get to somewhere to go pay tribute to Marcus Garvey. Come on, man. Back to you, Mr.
Listen, I feel your pain because I've gone through it, and many of our viewers here have gone through it. And that is why we have to build a strong coalition of people who know the changes that need to be made, appreciate the long game that we're playing, and support us in doing it. I know what you suffer when you get in your car and drive from place to place. I face the same thing. When I came back to Jamaica in 2019 and I bought my car, relatively new like all Jamaicans, it worked beautifully and took me to wherever I wanted to go. Since I started going on the road with it for UIC business, it breaks very often.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't get to fix it because I'm either busy or I don't have the money. And when that happens, it ends up costing me well over $150,000.
Yep.
The other day, I managed to get it running again from a major breakdown, and I'm dreading that happening again because of the cost. And right now I'm having some issues. So I know what you're feeling. The long and short of the story is this: nothing works, and it will never work with this constitution. This constitution was devised as an exploitive tool to take from the colonies and the guys and enrich the quote-unquote motherland.
The same thing is with Niger. That's what they did with Niger and all the other African countries. It's fake independence. All of those about to get independence in 1960 and 1961 and 1959, those are all fake independence. It's simply another form of slavery, another form of exploitation, another way of extracting our wealth. But let's move on. The next key point the UIC wants to make sure that we bring in the replacement constitution is the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary branches of government. All three branches must be fully and truly separated and independent of each other and from any special interest groups, local or foreign, in order for us to have good governance. Let me say that again. The executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch of our government must be fully and truly separated and independent of each other and from any special interest groups, local or foreign. Why is this so important? You cannot have good checks and balances if you do not have independent branches. If the executive branch is commingled with the legislative, as it is now, and if the judiciary can be compromised by the executive, as it is now, you will not have good governance because you will not have good checks and balances. You will not have good internal controls, and you will have a massive corruption enterprise disguised as government, but is truly working in the interest of special interest groups. What do you say to that, Mr. Chairman?
That is indeed the case, where we're running a massive corruption enterprise. Because when you look at it, Jamaica is known globally. And I wonder how our leaders walk on the international stage and stomach the stench of corruption that follows them, and the disdain that other leaders look on them with, even though they're just as corrupt.
That's it. It's a global corruption system of which Jamaica is one peg. But the difference is in a country like, let's say, for example, Canada, which I like to talk about because I lived there and I know exactly what's happening and did happen. In a country like Canada, the politicians are kept somewhat in check by a vast educated population, right? So when you have the vast majority of your population educated, it puts a check on government. Secondarily, when you have 30 million people, and therefore the political parties, when they take government, it's not a small group of persons in the government, it's big, and you can't give out special privileges to all of them because of how big it is. Then you have those who are in the so-called backbenches, they're waiting to take you off if you mess up. And so that helps to curb some of the corruption in those countries. So the corruption in Canada is very high level and very hidden, and the people don't feel it as much because they're getting, in many instances, as I said before, the good roads, the good hospitals, the good, relatively good schools, in any community going in Canada, except the very worst ones, you're going to have good public amenities. You have public washrooms, you have, parks, playgrounds. When you step out of your house, you feel like you live in a place designed for people to live in. In Jamaica, we live like hogs. You go to my communities here in Elam. You go in Elam, you see this dirty, broken down place called a community, and nobody goes into it. It's dangerous. It's a hazard to go into. The playground is unkept, and the people have to raise a little money and try to cut it every now and again. But in Canada, if these people in my community were living in Canada, in a normal community in Canada, they will have a beautiful park nearby to their home. They'll have a beautiful playground where they can play basketball, soccer, badminton, whatever, with water fountains and whatever. They'll have a lovely community center where you go in, there's staff in front. They'll have gymnasium area. They'll have library areas. So the people there, even though there are high level corruptions in Canada and other countries, because the people are getting at least a relatively decent standard of living, and they're very intelligent and can't be fooled easily by political nonsense like what we have here. It's relatively okay for them. But here in Jamaica, we have a political class that has absolutely no respect for us. They will allow us to live in filth running in our streets. They have no care. They don't care about us having sidewalks. They don't care about us having fixed address. They don't care about us having street lights. They don't care about us having anything. The country can just be left dirty, unkept. and they'll clean it up if Obama is coming, or if the royal family, their royal family, if they have special people coming, they'll go fix the front. They'll quickly patch the road. They'll paint the side of the sidewalks. They'll try to cover the zinc, because they only care about other people and tourists, but they have no care at all for we, the people of Jamaica.
Let's do a comparison. I can tell you for a fact because I drive those streets daily. Montego Bay is a cesspool and it is a quote-unquote
Yes.
tourist capital. Sewage water runs on those streets daily. And you know it ends up in those so-called lovely beaches. Okay? Now, I walked the town of Niagara. There wasn't any garbage on the streets. There weren't any homeless people sleeping in bus sheds. Okay? The streets were clean. And everybody that was out walking with me was safe. I did not feel threatened for 1 minute. My last trip in 2019 was to Toronto. And when I exited the terminal and sat on my suitcase to wait for my taxi, I looked out and I smiled. It was so clean and I loved it. Because guess what?
Amazing.
As soon as I land in Montego Bay and I leave the little tourist corridor between the airport and where real people live, the stench, the piles of garbage, all of that filled my nostrils. In my community, they infrequently picks up garbage. When you look, my poor sister suffers right now because there's a community collection unit in front of her gate, and it is left open, and the dogs that roam just ravish through that stuff and take it into her yard. And it is an absolute disgrace. The community is overrun with garbage. But yet we pay 56 cents on every dollar in taxes
To the government.
to provide us these very services.
Yeah.
Now, as to the police, I know your pain because I've had my run-ins with them.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I've suffered their abuse. I've suffered their careless action that could have ended my life.
Yeah.
Now,
It's criminals. What we have are criminals in uniform. I hate to say this. I mean, I have the utmost of respect for persons who decide to put themselves at risk to protect my life and my property on a daily basis. I mean, I respect anyone who decides to become a police or a soldier, because you're stepping up. You're going to be a police is supposed to protect my rights, protect my right to my life, to my freedom, and to my property. I should be trusting the police, depending on the police. The army is there to protect my borders of my country. It's my collective security with my fellow Jamaicans. And when I feel unsafe with my fellow police officers, when I feel as if you're trying to shake me down, you're trying to extort me, that doesn't make me feel good. You know, you're there to perform your job. Your job is to defend, to serve, protect, and respect the Jamaican people. That's your job. And of course, if I do something you think is wrong, your job, of course, is to deal with me accordingly. If you think I'm speeding, or if you think I failed to renew my license on time, or whatever it is, that's fine. That's your job to say, you know what, Mr. Patterson, so on. But your job is not to extort me. Your job is not to try to extract out of me payment for you to exercise your so-called discretion that the government has given to you. They've given you discretion. I don't know why there's discretion and not just objective application of the law, and why not just have good, decent, objective laws that fits the punishment with the crime, if you will, as opposed to giving carte blanche discretions, and then you get to play with people's lives and their livelihoods. That needs to stop. And the UIC is going to stop it. And that's why we're saying to the Jamaican people, it's time for us to tell these guys that they're wasting our money and our time, that time up. But next point, Mr. Chairman. So we've talked about separation of powers, executive, legislative, judiciary. Let's get into it a little bit now. The UIC wants Jamaica to have a president that is directly elected nationally elected by the people to serve as our chief executive officer, as both head of government and head of state. We believe this is the best form of representation for the executive branch of government, for us to have a president that's elected by the people to serve the people at a national level, overseeing the government of the people. And for this position not to be ceremonial, which is a waste of money, but to be a truly executive president that has responsibility like a chief executive officer in any organization. What are your thoughts, Mr. Chairman?
We can't claim to be an independent people if we don't choose our leaders directly. As it is now, we have a leader chosen for us. And here it is. We may or we may not have voted for some guy as a member of parliament. He went to parliament with 62 other people and said, based on the law, I support this guy. So let's make him our leader. But what are his credentials? What was his vision for the country? I don't know that. What personality traits does he have that lends great acumen to the job? I don't know that. So we have over the past 8 years chosen a leader based on likes. And it has not served us very well. I, for one, would want to choose my leader just like I do in the UIC. And I would want my kids to have that honor of choosing their leader so they know what they're getting. And the reason why I can support my UIC president so wholeheartedly is because I have the honor of sitting down and listening to him pledge his support for not only the movement but for the people of Jamaica and see his actions. And I'm able to choose. Most Jamaicans, because of this divisive system, aren't able to choose. If they had a choice, they would not choose that prime minister. And that is why they have been denied that choice, because they don't want the people to have that option. The UIC wants you to have that option.
Exactly. That's very important. I mean, and basically in our system, let's say there are political parties, in any given election. Let's say in our system you have, individuals who belong to UIC or to this party or that party. The people may very well say, we like the person and vision of this person who belongs to that party, and we want him to be president. But as my MP, I want this person who is not necessarily associated with the same party as that person to be my MP. And I want this person who may not be associated with any of their two parties to be my senator. Because I'm not voting based on which party label they come with. I'm voting based on whether I prefer this person or that person. And the UIC wants you to have that freedom. In the same way that we have the president elected, now we go another step in our system. We have what is called a core cabinet. And the core cabinet is comprised of 6 persons, right? 6 persons. Number 1 would be the president, who would have 2 running mates, right? So you have a general secretary and a treasury secretary running together with the president as a trio. And the people would elect the president, and knowing that if they elect this person as president, these 2 persons come with him or her. One is the general secretary, which is like your chief of staff, which will oversee the staffing of the government and as an HR director of sorts. And the treasury secretary now, which is your finance minister. So you'll get an insight into the kind of people this president would generally be looking at to serve in your government by virtue of the 2 persons he selects or she selects as running mates. Then you have 3 vice presidents who run in their own right by county. So 1 for Cornwall, 1 for Middlesex, 1 for Surrey. The people of the parishes in those counties would elect their VP. So this will form the core executive, the 6 persons. These 6 core persons will now be the ones who nominate qualified and competent Jamaicans to serve as ministers of government. They will not select anybody who is already elected as a senator or an MP. They are not allowed to be nominated. We're now going to have separation of powers. So the executive branch won't be commingled with the legislative. So the 6 core members of the core cabinet will nominate qualified and competent Jamaicans from anywhere in the world to serve as ministers of government because they have the qualities and qualifications to serve. The Senate would then vet these persons publicly and make a recommendation to the House, and the House of Representatives or MPs would vote whether to approve this nomination or to reject it. And so we will have the full complement of ministers forming the broader cabinet, and they're fully separated from the Senate and fully separated from the MPs. The senators, unlike what we have now, where senators are appointed by party leaders, in our system, the senators would be elected by parish. So each parish would elect their senator to go to the Senate. So your senators now will have a parish focus when they look at any laws or bills that come to them. And your MPs now, by our rules, must live in the constituency they seek to represent. The senators must live in the parish. The MPs must live in the constituency that they seek to represent. So now you're going to have true representations, people who live and work in the areas that they're representing, and an executive body which is separate from those legislators who are qualified persons. We call them subject matter experts. So the health minister will be somebody with significant qualifications in health. The public works minister would be somebody with significant qualifications in civil engineering and similar kind of stuff, and so on. So we're now going to have qualified persons sitting in the executive branch. They know their subject areas fully. And then you're going to have your legislators now being truly elected by the people in their constituencies, be it parish or constituency level. And they would have been publicly funded in their campaigns. So they can stand up in Parliament, if you will, or in a Congress that we're going to call it, and speak clearly without worrying about their party dismissing them and not funding them, or private bodies not funding them later for their next re-election. And same thing for senators. Very independent, able to stand up for the rights of their constituents, and fully empowered by this new model that we put in place. What are your thoughts, Mr. Chairman?
Now, first thing to point out is that the vetting will be the Senate looking into the person's qualification to do the job. It's not a rubber stamping process. It's a genuine interrogative process to determine someone's fit. So let's establish that. Right? Also, when you look at how the whole thing will come together, you realize that it creates that clear separation that has been spoken about. So you will have a functioning government. Now there is a recall/impeachment process for all these persons, because if they're not functioning, the people. So it's not a political tool now where a politician can ambush the process, but the people will have the ability to recall or impeach the individuals who are not performing. So there you find the checks and balance where a person is vetted to get in a meaningful way, and their performance is measured while they're on the job to make sure that performance is maintained.
A good part of this as well is that in the current system, the Prime Minister, for example, is able to appoint whoever he wants in a ministry, and then he can reject them if he wishes. He can fire them if he wishes. In this system, the President, in consultation with the other 6 members, which include regional representation by the VPs, must get consensus in that team and then recommends it to the Senate. And then the Senate now has no obligations to the President, because remember, he has no say or she has no say in their appointment to the Senate. They were elected to the Senate in their own right. So there's no link between them. So there's no favors owing between them. So the Senate now can do its deliberation honestly or independent of the executive, the core executive branch. Similarly, the House of Representatives will be free. Now, if when those persons are elected by the House to serve, let's say the President wants to remove one of them, the President can't just remove one of them. He has to now make a recommendation to the Senate, and defend the reason why he wants to remove the person. The Senate has to buy that reason and then make the recommendation to the House for that person to be removed. So what you now have are qualified and competent persons who can't just be dismissed because they're rubber stamp followers. They can now, for example, within the executive branch, they can actually stand up to the president and have a conversation. Let's say the president wants to make a change that the person doesn't believe is in the best interest of the nation. They can say, Mr. President, here we are saying about when we look upon it still, this thing not gonna work because it is going to cause this and this and this. And they have to reason it out. And of course, in cabinet, they have to debate it and discuss it and look at pros and cons and come to a consensus. However, let's say they can't come to a consensus. Or maybe let's say the president take it personal. And they say, see, you want to get rid of you. If I forgot to the Senate. And I've said to the Senate, I want to get rid of Winston. I like him run the Justice, Defense, and Police Services Division. I want him out. And the Senate says, okay, present your argument. What is the argument? And after they listen to my argument, let's say I'm the president, they say, but Mr. President, that's what's personal. It has nothing to do with Winston's performance. So you can't just let them answer. In fact, we're not going to do it. And the president can beg but he can't threaten them. He can't say, look, if you don't do it, when they come next time, we're not going to appoint to the Senate if I get reelected or
if you don't do it, here is your undated resignation letter, let's use it.
Exactly. So our system protects the tenure of those who are, and remember, those who are there, they can be removed. If, for example, they're not performing, the Senate can make a recommendation that, listen, they're not performing, and the House can vote. Because if everybody agrees, if the majority agrees that the minister is not performing, the president can't just keep them in cabinet, because now the pressure will be brought to bear because of the independence of the groups. So this is important. So moving on to our near final point here, the new constitution that we're going to put in place, this is my second to last point, must put limits on the role of government, as well as the number and the rate of taxes that government can charge, in order to avoid government excesses and to prevent the government overreach. The UIC proposes that we have a truly free and fair market economy. You must allow people to freely buy and sell. That's very important. And to do so in a fair environment. And have in place a 10% income tax, which is capped. It's capped at 10%, which means the government can never tax your income more than 10%. And a 10% GCT, the government cannot tax you on any product more than 10%. And that becomes the cap of government's income. So if the government wants to raise its income, its policies must result in the economy growing so that we're earning more. And as we earn more, 10% of more is more. So if right now you're earning only $1 million, 10% of that is 100,000. And if we move you to a position by virtue of government policies making the economy more robust and more productive, you move from $1 million to 10 million. So now the government moved from getting 100,000 to getting $1 million in taxes. So we want to cap taxes, the number of taxes and the rate of taxes. So a UIC constitution mandates only two taxes: a income tax, 10% on all sources of income, and a sales tax of 10%. And those two taxes will serve two different purposes. The income tax will focus on public goods and services that you need to get, while the 10% GCT will focus on, one, poverty elimination, because what we want to achieve here, we want to make sure that we fix the age-old problems of poverty, which has become systemic. We want to reverse that. Two, we want to protect the environment with this tax. And three, we want to ensure we have an emergency savings fund, a kind of a sovereign wealth fund that builds up and allows us to address emergencies when they come, or deal with major fallouts, like if you have a pandemic or an earthquake or a hurricane that is very destructive, we have the means to recover very well. So two taxes, a limit on government, very designated in their purpose, and manage to ensure we get the services that we need, as opposed to giving government the freedom to tax at will and to spend at will. Your thoughts, Mr. Chairman?
Well, there's very little to say at that, because that's what we aspire to. Now, it's simple mathematics, because if there's a cap on taxes and the country wants to earn more, the politician wants to take in more into the country's coffers, then instead of leveling more taxes, you need to increase productivity. So you have a broader tax base to tax. So simple mathematics, and I know the people understand that. But Mr. President, can I ask you one favor? I know you're pressed for time.
Yeah.
And I know why you laughed earlier. I did too. Firstly, can you take a few questions at the end, because I realize.
Sure, definitely. I'm going to do my last point now, then we're going to turn to questions.
Go ahead. I'll keep my comment short, so you can go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So my last point is this. The new constitution must ensure that our water, our food, and our energy is secure. So we must build into this water, food, and energy security while providing every child with the nutrition, education, and healthcare and housing that they need to succeed. This includes respecting our right to generational family property and a housing model that ensures 90% home ownership rate, supported by a workfare program. So our system is 360 degrees. It's full and compact. You cannot have a nation being independent if it cannot ensure food security, water security, and energy security. And we cannot have the human capital we need to grow and build such a robust economy if our children are not receiving the nutrition, the education, the healthcare, and the housing they need to succeed. So we're going to build a model, a constitutional model, an economic model, a social model that will ensure all Jamaicans are fully protected and provided for, no one left behind, but most importantly, the rights of everyone fully protected. My final point, Mr. Chairman, then your comments and questions.
Now, right now in the world market, water is now traded as a commodity, just like oil, just like gold, just like mineral. And from the birth of the UIC, you have been saying that water security is one frontier that we should make sure that we are paying attention to. And that idea, by the way, was borrowed by the PNP in the previous election.
Yeah.
But you've been saying it since the inception of the UIC. Now, if we pay attention to what is happening in the world, we realize that your words are fortuitous, and that water security is important, and all major countries are talking about it. China is importing fresh water by the droves. Other countries are looking at technology to offset their freshwater production, including desalination, which is known as an expensive option. So we have to pay attention to not only surviving but thriving. And to do that, food security, and by food I don't mean GMO that will destroy our land and eventually put us in the clutches of the masters, because their GMO don't reseed, so we have to buy their seed crop. But organically grown crop, local crops, native crops that have their seed bank originating in Ireland, and of course, water security, where we make sure we're not polluting our freshwater sources, we're protecting our freshwater sources, and we're harvesting it for the benefit of the people.
Absolutely, which is why we have to stop the mining operations. We're cutting off our nose to spite our face. Bauxite mining is a non-renewable resource, so we're literally damaging our water table, destroying our agricultural lands, ripping out the nutrients out of our. Nothing is wrong with extracting bauxite, but not from Jamaica. We're too small to be giving up our land mass. So we have to be wiser than this, and our leaders are selling us short on bauxite mining, promising us benefits that the cost fully outweighs. And anybody who do a careful analysis will quickly see that the cost of bauxite mining to Jamaica far outweighs any benefit at all that we're getting, especially because we're not actually converting it to end products and selling it. We're actually just selling the raw ore, so it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, but let's take some questions now. So we're now open to questions, everyone. Let's start at the bottom here. I see yellow yam last week was 7 Canadian per pound. How much is the Jamaican farmer getting per pound? I see. And the problem with this is that the Jamaican farmer is far removed from the real business of agriculture. He's just producing his yam. He's not involved in the business. The UIC wants to elevate us so the farmer is involved in the business of food production and distribution. Then he can get a real piece. The model that we've given is where we have intermediaries through the corrupt mechanism of government being able to exploit our people. For example, why are we sending farm workers overseas? Why don't we have the farms here producing at a level that pays the price that he's running overseas to get? Like he's running overseas to work at minimum wage overseas, but the minimum wage there, of course, is bigger than our so-called minimum wage here. So why not? Why didn't we have? And we have the capacity, we have the land. If they're using our people, it means our people could have stayed here. We could have built massive farming enterprises here. We could have made them organic enterprises, which pushes up the premium price, the retail price of the product. And you could be staying right here with your wife and children, being able to go home every night to your family, rather than having broken families where the husband is gone for several months to work on the various conditions, leave his wife and children here. His wife struggling on her own to take care of the kids. His girl child gets raped. His boy child gets into bad company because daddy's not here to give the kind of leadership and guidance. So why are we destroying our people by making them indentured servants in other people's country rather than building the facilities here, supporting the kind of development here that will give us the wages where we don't have to run away from her? And don't tell me Jamaica is too small, because Singapore, who is 1/15th our size, they have created an economy where their people are not running away, but people are running to Singapore to be a part of that high income earning environment as opposed to running away from it. While Jamaica did the reverse, we ship our good people out so they can send remittance back to maintain low grade engagements here. Next question.
There are several questions for the day, but there was a question earlier that asked, if an election was to be called, does the UIC have candidates in all the constituencies?
And the answer is no. We don't have candidates in all the constituencies because we're waiting on you. There are two things the UIC needs to have candidates in all the constituencies. We need visibility, and we need the resources to gain that visibility. Now, if we were operating in a level playing field, what would have happened? It's every day you wake up, you'd hear on the news, JLP position, PNP position, UIC position. Well, you're not going to hear that. So we're off the news. So if we're going to be able to reach people, we're going to have funds to be able to go in the nook and crannies and talk to people, being able to buy services of persons who are experts at marketing and advertising and PR and stuff, which we don't. So we don't have the money to buy those skill sets, and we don't have persons with the skill sets who are volunteering to give it. So you're not going to see us looking bright and beautiful like the other parties who get $300 million to do that. So we, the people, would have to invest that money, right? So I have invested my money. Mr. Wright has invested his money, and money is also time, right? When I give 1 hour, like I'm on this call now, this live now for 1 hour and 48 minutes. When I work in industry, right? When I work for one of my clients, for this time I'm spending here will make the 2 hours I spend here will make a good dent in my personal bank account. So it means if I'm dedicating this time to us, to our venture, it means that my bank account is going to be less 2 hours of my rate of time. And I'm a chartered accountant and I serve companies here in Jamaica and abroad. Okay, so my time is important. Mr. Wright, similarly, he's engaged in his industry, and every time he spends on UIC business, it's time away from building his business and contributing to his family's bottom line. So if we, the people, want to see more from the UIC and you want us to be able to do the work that we want to do for you, you're going to have to fund it. If you don't fund it, we won't have as many candidates. we won't be as visible, we won't be as effective. It's that simple. And I've tried to make that very clear from day one, because I'm not a novice, I'm not naive. We cannot engage in wishing for the UIC to succeed. We have to engage in working for the UIC to succeed. And for that to happen, we the people have to join together our time, our talents, and our treasure so that we can pay for the things we want to see. Let's pay for the UIC to have the best website, have the best publicists, have great marketing people and tools available to do this stuff. Today, for example, for this program, I wanted my staff to do something for me. We only have one staff. I sent the information to her and say, do this. She's busy helping somebody else, so she missed my message, and I came on the call without having the resource that I wanted. I have to make do. That's the kind of thing. The other guys, they don't have that problem. They have several staff, and their email or message is not going to be missed because these staff are being paid to do it. So we, the Jamaican people, must accept this one reality. It's very important. The Prime Minister was right. We get what we pay for. The PSOJ, they pay for these two parties and they get what they're paying for. We, the Jamaican people, we believe that politics is free, and so we don't give anything to it. We just sit back and wait to vote. So we also get what we pay for. We pay nothing and we get just that in return. Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to follow up on two things. Eunice Brown Knight, thank you for investing, as we have said. And no, we're not saying that we can't be the next government. What we're saying is that we need a broader cross-section of participation in the process that the UIC is involved in to make that a reality. To just say, okay, we're going to do this is not enough. We need to lay the groundwork, and we need more people doing this. And that's why we ask about the like and the share, because we have to counter all the forces that are working against us. The social media ban, the mainstream media blackout, and we have to get the message out there. And we have to get people on the ground. A lot of people are afraid of politics because of one, the physical danger, and two, the reputational damage. Look at the reputational damage that was done to the president. Right? It affected his business significantly. And we have to understand that. And persons who do are afraid of that. But we have to get past that shyness, because this was created as a tool to keep people of true good intention out of the process. So let's do some more groundwork. That's all we're saying.
And what the UIC have a very simple model, and we can go around it a bit, but we have to come back to the same position, right? All it takes for the UIC to succeed is 1,000 persons giving $25 a month. That's all it takes. To be honest with you, it doesn't require a whole lot more than that. If 1,000 persons today start to give $25, we can come up with all kind of gymnastics. For example, somebody says we need to come up with a venture for raising funds. What will the venture be? Every venture requires time and energy. So suppose we're going to build a company to raise funds for the UIC. What will that company be? Who will be the operators? Who will design the business plan, hire the people, manage the people, generate the income, manage the finances, file the taxes? I know sometimes we think in these simplistic terms, and I want us to kind of raise our level a bit. I want us to just kind of raise our level now, raise it. There's a reason why the PSOJ oligarchs put, hundreds of $millions into their parties, because they know what it means, for them. We can fix it easily. If 1% of the diaspora, just 1%, just 1%, gives $25 a month, the UIC is able to field 63 candidates and can win a significant number of seats, even possibly win the government. Okay, I'm not going to pretend to you and tell you we can win the government just like that. It's not easy. We're overcoming a lot of obstacles, right? It's a major. It's like Mandela, right? When he was trying to fix the thing in South Africa. Tons of work, right? And even go to jail and whatever. So I don't want us to believe it's as simple as this. But the model is very basic. We have to simply pay for communication. We have to pay for people to work. And for that to happen, we have to get the money. So if all of us gives $1 what we can. If you can only give $10 a month, give it. $5 a month, give it. $25 a month, give it. And there are quite a few of you who are doing that, and we thank God for you, because we wouldn't exist without you. But more of us need to do it. We need 1,000 of us to do it. Just 1,000, which is less than 1% of the current diaspora. If 1,000 in the diaspora does it, and 1,000 in Jamaica. Remember, Jamaica has 1,900,000 voters, approximately. Can we find 1,000 of us to give $1,000?
I mean,
Yeah. So you and I are in. We do it. We have people who are doing it now, but so many of us are waiting and watching and even criticizing, but we're not prepared to do it. And if we don't do it, we can't get it. Garbage in, garbage out, nothing in, nothing out. Very simple. Next question.
and let us quickly look at the voting one and then move to uncensored reasoning. He had like 3 questions.
Okay.
And I like
Which one is that? Which one? The one about overseas voting?
uncensored reasoning asked about Jamaica's, I think it's something about market advantage, and then asked about trading with South America because he learned the free trade agreement. So overseas voting, that is yes. The UIC believes that the diaspora, once you're a Jamaican, wherever you live, you should have a vote and a voice. So we believe in that. Right? There was a question about
Not
COVID.
even believe. We are the ones that articulated that. But the UIC is the originator of the idea that everybody every Jamaican in the diaspora should be allowed to register and vote remotely from wherever they are in the world by absentee ballots. We believe in also allowing Jamaicans overseas to return and keep their dual citizenship and run for office and not be penalized for being economic refugees because of bad governance. Okay, so that's a UIC position, which one day you'll hear somebody stealing from whichever quarters they are. They'll eventually catch on to that and start to say that too. Next question.
Firstly, thank you, Eunice Brown Knight. We do appreciate you. And please make sure you're at the next supporter member donor meeting.
Which is not
That's
this Tuesday, but the next one.
Yeah, but make sure you're at that one. Right? We always send meetings out by email. If you're not getting emails from us, just drop us a line, myuicjamaica.com, so that way we can make sure that you are in our vote.
And she's a regular, Miss Eunice Brown. She's a regular donor, regular contributor. So she's a model citizen. If everybody was like Miss Eunice Brown, the UIC would have no problem. The question was asked, what if we win 6 seats? If we win 6 seats, it's very likely the UIC will have the balance of power. So if we have 6 candidates, for example, who win in the next election, and right now we have more than 6, we're now up to about 10 candidates, and we're growing. If we have 6 candidates elected in the next election, we could very well be the balance of power. It's likely we're going to have a close election where, let's say 30 or so on one side and 30 or so on the next, depending. If we have that and we have 3 of us elected from the UIC, none of them can form the government without discussing with us. If we have 6, that's even double the amount, right? So we're in a good position if we win even a few seats.
Before we take that one, let's take the question about the competitive advantage. Somebody asked about what are Jamaica's competitive advantage and asked, what about trade with South America? So that person has obviously drank the Kool-Aid. Go ahead.
Trade with South America.
Competitive advantage first.
Okay, so competitive advantage. I mean, Jamaica has a number of competitive advantages and disadvantages. One of our greatest competitive advantage has been the fact that we're English speaking and that we're close to the largest economy in the world. We have never taken full advantage of that because of our leaders. We also have an advantage in organic agriculture, which we have not tapped into. I mean, we've just left it. In fact, we've decimated our farmers by building an import-based agricultural sector where we import fertilizer and we import seeds. So we have actually been wiping out our farmers by that model, led by the 2 parties. So if we reverse that and move to an organic model and build Netherlands-style mass farming enterprises that are built on technology as well as science, the science of our own indigenous abilities, we can do very well. We also obviously have an advantage in terms of our brand and its relationship to tourism. So if we were to do what the UIC is saying and make all of Jamaica a tourist destination by making all of Jamaica safe, clean, and orderly, all of Jamaica look, smell, and feel like a tourist resort, then we hands down, Jamaica would more than quadruple its tourism enterprise. But we have to make sure that it is grassroots tourism. So the money is coming in and being spent at the grassroots level rather than being monopolized by external forces, building hotels here, then managing that, and then putting the money out to even buy imported food for the tourists. Let's give our tourists our indigenous food, our indigenous entertainment, and give them the experience in our communities. So again, tourism is great. Agriculture is great. Proximity is great. Language is great. Now we can also, I believe, based on how we have performed overseas, that we have some brilliant Jamaicans. I would like to reverse the brain drain by creating an environment where it's easier for Jamaicans overseas to come back, even if not to live here, but to invest here, set up companies here, use local labor here, do knowledge transfer here, and build a lot of productive opportunities here. So because we have brilliant Jamaicans right across the world. They've gone to Israel, they've learned stuff, they've gone to Germany, they've learned stuff, they've gone to Japan. They're all over the place. So if we create an incentive, rather than giving special incentives to other races to come into our country and monopolize it, why not give those incentives to Jamaicans living overseas and to entice them to come back, give them the protection they need, give them the resources in terms of information that they need and support they need, and remove the corruption barriers and make it easy for them to come back, bring back their assets to this country and engage in commerce here. You're going to find that, you have 4 million Jamaicans overseas. There's at least 500,000 of them that are brilliant who would come back here instead of manufacturing plants, production plants, knowledge transfer opportunities, technology opportunities, use local labor, build those up, and make Jamaica a mecca for a number of products and services, Mr. Chairman.
Jobless asks, why doesn't the UIC have fundraising events in the diaspora?
Yeah, well, we can. It's just that you're going to have to help us. I mean, how are we going to, just imagine we're going to have a fundraising event in Toronto where, I have spent time. What's involved there? You need a group of Torontonians to come together and say, we're going to have a fundraising event. They have to put the manpower in and the time and energy and the funds. You can't do things without funds. Like you have to have money, some money to go into it to make it happen and so on. So we're very open for that. So let's get together. We have a Toronto group, we have a UK group, and we have a USA group. So yeah, raise your hand. Tell us you want to join one of those groups and we'll add you into the group and you provide leadership. Leadership is bigger than me. Like all of us can lead. All of us can provide leadership. Not when we leave the UIC. Then we suddenly find all the energy and skill and time to get things done. We can do it while we're inside the UIC before we get upset and leave. We can be in the movement and we can get involved, put together a group and plan a project and say, hey, we're going to have this project or that project, and you get the blessings of the NEC and we accompany you on this and you do the project in Toronto or London or Cambridge or Georgia or Atlanta or wherever it is and get it done.
There's a next question. Does UIC have plans to join with other non-traditional parties? I'd love to answer that. What is your choice?
Go ahead. You can go ahead, Mr. Chair.
The UIC believes in unity and that a united front is needed to tackle this great disservice to our people and tear down this establishment of corruption. That said, we're open to uniting with anyone who is willing to do the work necessary and who believes in true freedom for the people and the kind of freedom that UIC wants for Jamaica. We are subbing in our own countries, our right to life, liberty, and property is protected equally. If you believe in those things, if the UIC manifesto appeals to you as a movement, we're willing to open the work with you. However, there has been no viable opportunities to collaborate with any of the non-traditional parties that exist as yet.
And
So
by the
it
way,
may-
we have spoken with many of them. I mean, the UIC over the years have spent a lot of time trying to work with the PPP, for example. They're just not organized enough. They're not organized. They're not settled. They're not mature enough to engage in the conversation proper. We have spoken with the ND and we've spent time, talking with them. So it's just weird, right? They just don't seem to have the capacity to get things done. It's just talking without getting anywhere. So we can't afford to do that. But I see some comments here as well. Please give us contact information. Our contact information is, let me see if I can put it on screen here. Here's the number. So that's just WhatsApp this number and you can be in touch with us. We also, our website and everything. Here it is. You can, send an email to us at info@uicjamaica.com or call any one of those numbers to, get going there. But I see a question here earlier on, standardizing patois. All of those are nice things, right? I mean, I love the idea that we have two languages. When I'm abroad, I tell people I know two languages. I know English and I know Jamaican. And so I'm very proud of our vernacular and the fact that we can communicate in colorful ways that others can't. So yes, in due course, we'll do that. We just have to do things in stride based on our ability to manage and get it done. I saw a question I really wanted to touch on.
There's one that asked about how much it would cost to field those 6 candidates.
Yes. All right. So you can look at it a number of ways. You can look at the maximum allowed by law, right? I think the maximum allowed by law is 15 million per candidate. The last time I checked, do you know a different number, Sir? Right?
No.
Right. It's about 15 million per candidate for election spending. Now, the trick about elections that many people don't know because they're not seeing it daily. The way you win an election is not what you do just at election day. It's what you do prior to that. The field work that is done before you get to that. So you need to spend time getting in place your ground team. And I'll give you an example so you understand. There are, in my constituency of Northeast St. Elizabeth, there are 4 divisions, and across these 4 divisions are 121 polling divisions, which means 121 boxes generally minimum, all of which needs to be, all the boxes in that division must be accounted for and managed. So you need 2 indoor agents, 2 outdoor agents, your drivers, your conductors, your support team. You need, a supervisor for that PD and so on. If you're going to manage that election process very well and make sure that you're fully engaged and can win. So you're talking about doing the field work prior to election to get those people in place, get them trained and get them ready. Then you have to go around to the community through these field agents and figure out where you have support and where you don't and what you might need to do to convert that into winning. And then on election day now, all these people need to come out and be working for you on the day and doing their jobs properly to make sure that you win. All of that takes money. Even if the persons are volunteers, they're still costing you money. Money for t-shirts, money for armbands, money for clipboards, money for refreshments, money for transportation, money for communication, and all that kind of stuff. So it all requires funds. So, depending, if you really want to win the election, you're talking about, at a minimum, the 15 million that they're talking about to spend. At a minimum, you're going to have to spend that. You might get away with 7 million, and that's like previous year's numbers and so on. So it's not small change. If we, however, do what I am proposing, and we have a consistent diet of about 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 persons giving $25 a month, then you can budget out and spread it out and build up your team and get things in place for the elections. Okay, long answer. Next question.
So somebody had asked, is microfinancing profitable? I'm
Okay.
not sure whether.
Well, microfinancing is very, very profitable from if you're talking just microfinancing by itself, because there are companies right now in Jamaica, big companies actually that are involved in microfinancing. So it's all about what you're doing. Are they asking it in the context of the UIC doing it?
I'm not sure the context. I just asked.
Okay. Right. So microfinancing can be very profitable depending on how you're doing it and under what set of rules you're doing it. All right, next question.
So Javon Wilson just joined, or well, just asked, and I'm guessing he just joined. What going on with this movement, or you guys going out, or what you guys seem scared to? We need another protest downtown again. Listen, Javon, let me be frank. You guys don't have the appetite. I know they said you guys, and you guys don't have the appetite for a street protest. When the UIC has called for protest, nobody turns up. So we can't go on a protest if there is no support. Simply put, we are volunteers and we have work to do, meaning work to build the organization and both work in our social lives. We would be happy to protest the various social issues, but there are so many of them. And again, you guys keep quiet on these issues. So the UIC is not getting the feedback and the support on these issues. Now, we use other means of communicating around the issues. We do press releases, we do tutored sessions like this, we do lives, etc. So feel free to tune into those. Now, we are willing to mobilize when there is an issue, and we'll be happy to mobilize when there is an issue. But the people have to be the one that drive this process.
Yeah, and besides, I mean, just protesting for protesting's sake is not really very useful. The real protest is on election day. The real protest is we the people funding our own party so that it has candidates who are electable in constituencies, and come election day, we would have had the funding to do the groundwork and are ready and will bring those votes in. And then we go to Parliament where the real protest is going to be when we have the balance of power. If in the next election you help us to elect, say, 6 or 10 candidates out of the 63, and neither of the two traditional parties have the power to form the government without negotiating with us, now you have real protest. Now we can make if we just go air up our mouth and, yeah, and they lock up one of us again, like they locked me up, the other time. Right now, most people have forgotten about my arrest, and they forget about my legal bills, and they forget about the fact that
And the court battles.
every few months I'm going to court and I'm going through you have all forgotten about it and moved on with your lives. But my wife and I, we can't move on with our lives. We're stuck in this until it finally is resolved, whenever it is resolved. So we can't just run out there and just go do protests for your sake, for you to feel that we're doing something for you to clap and cheer about. We need to be really pragmatic here and sensible and go and make sure that we really elect UIC representatives to change course. But a question here I want to respond to, it says here, where is it? Right. Investing with the UIC, but still no political bank account. Can that still work? Well, of course, it has always been working. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
I have been charged with securing a commercial bank account for the UIC in Jamaica. Myself, VP Neil, as well as the treasurer. The finance committee is working with us to get us organized. The president has nothing to do with the process. It has already been delegated to myself. Now, we don't have a commercial bank account. Well, let me correct that. We have a commercial bank account that we use, which was donated to us in the early days of the movement by the president. That account holds only UIC funds, and that account is audited every year as part of our fiduciary obligation to report on the organization finances to the government. every audit has been fine. So there's no hanky-panky with any monies there. Let's continue. We have been trying to get an account from then until now and have not. In recent times, since another person lied and bring attention to this issue, we have been turned down by 4 banks for an account. But yet we continue. And we'll report on this. And as a matter of fact, I'll be honest and say that the president has asked me to report to the members on it, and also to do a live to supporters on it. And I have not found the time because of how busy I am. I take full responsibility for that. But let me ask you, have you asked other parties if they have an account? Because if the UIC is having difficulty getting an account, I'm sure they have the same problem. As a matter of fact, another upcoming party has told us that they have the same problems in getting an account. So why is the emphasis on the UIC? That is an interesting question, and you need to ask who is pushing this narrative.
I wonder, Mr. Chairman, if those who are now creating their recent political group, having left the UIC, well, not left, having been terminated from the UIC for misconduct, and have since gone to libel the organization, slander the organization. I wonder if they are collecting monies into a personal account right now. I wonder if they have gotten a commercial bank account in the name of their political entity and are in fact receiving monies in a commercial bank account in the name of their organization. I'm sure they don't, but that's the kind of thing. You when you play these kind of games, you find yourself, caught in the middle, because now they're going to have to collect monies, but they're not going to be able to collect it in an account in their name because they have to go through the process to get that. And while they were suggesting to everybody how easy it is to get a commercial bank account, but I want to tell you more. I would not be surprised if, in short order, the powers that be see it fit to grant them a bank account just so that they can continue to try to undermine the UIC. Watch me carefully. Notice what happened when we became a political party. After fighting with the ECJ for nearly a year, we fought with them and they fought hard to prevent us from becoming a party. But within a few weeks, they granted a 4th organization that is now dysfunctional and is no longer operating in any real way. So the powers that be, they know the games that they're playing, and they know that our people are not necessarily paying attention and sophisticated enough in their analysis to appreciate the tricks and subtleties of how they seek to prevent another political movement from rising up that can challenge them. They will always authorize people who they know are no real challenge in order to dilute and water down and confuse in order to keep in place the system they have already. Yeah.
All right. So what I would like to say to Jamflix, I realize that you're very interested in getting knowledge about the budgeting for those funds projected and estimated for an election activity. We'll be happy to work with you on that. Unfortunately, this program is time sensitive, so we won't have time to go through all of that. Also, we don't have that information on hand right now. Just some of it. What you can do is just use the email address and reach out to us, and we can share that information with you. And usually we post these things on our Facebook pages as well, because we want to keep members informed and donors. And also at the donors and members meeting is where we can get into that in greater details, because that's what those meetings are for. So if you're a donor and a member, you will get an email invite and you join. If not, become a member or a donor and make sure we have your email details, and we'll invite you to the meeting where you can ask those questions and get that information firsthand. So sorry, we won't be able to go into all of that budgeting question with you right now, but grab the email address and reach out, and we'll be happy to talk to you on it. Back to you, Mr. President.
Sure. No, any other questions before?
Javon says we don't know what we're talking about, and teachers can protest. Why not the UIC? My brother, I did not say the UIC can't protest. And we're not going to be goaded by you into a street protest. The UIC is an organization that has to focus on several activities on volunteer power only. If you, sir, wish to see more visibility from the UIC, it means that there needs to be more visibility from you. So please get in the trenches with us. And when we have the numbers and the necessaries, as well as an event worthy of our presence in the street, but bear in mind, there are plenty of those, we will be there with you. But first, we need you. We don't need a keyboard warrior that will vote us and bait us into being in the streets in an unplanned and unsophisticated way. We have to protect the organization, the longevity of the organization, and the reputation of the organization. We do appreciate your opinion on this. We appreciate your passion. Well, let's channel that passion into a constructive output. Join us and let's work.
I see a question here on what is your position on God and His Son, Jesus Christ. I'm going to respond by saying that the UIC respects the right of everyone to their choice of religion, and so we're very sensitive to protecting your religious liberty. We believe you have a right to worship as you see fit, provided your choice of religion does not involve the use of force or fraud against the life, liberty, or property rights of anyone. So we don't specialize in, it's like government. You don't want a government that is there to support or promote any one religion. You want a government, you want a constitution that protects your religious rights, your right to your choice of religion. And so the UIC protects your right of choice of religion. So we, as a political movement, does not espouse any particular religious preferences. We respect the Rastafarian, we respect the Muslim, we respect the Christian, we respect the Hindu. Whatever your religion is, you can be assured that the UIC will protect your religious liberty rights. And we will not foist upon you anyone's religion, nor will we foist upon others your religion.
Thank you, Entrepreneur Product Galaxy. Glad to know it's your first time and glad to know you see what we're about. Also, check out our manifesto online. It's on our website, uicjamaica.com. That is the foundation document. You will find all the things UIC there, and let us know. If you're impressed here, you'll be even more impressed with what the president has put together for our vision, our mission, and overall our philosophy. Cappy Smith, I love the idea. And again, as the president said, we need connections to make that happen. So if you have those connections, or if you can cultivate those connections and reach out to us, we'll be happy to listen and happy to take advantage of it. We know we're going into election season. We know local governments are around the corner. We're also appealing to persons who want to represent their community, who want to see this change to be the change. I'm not this guy, but I find it necessary to support the UIC vision and mission. So that is why I'm here tonight and all the other days making sure it happens. Silver Cat, first change if you're in power. So what is your first change if you're in power?
My first change if I'm in power. That's what he said, the first change?
Yes.
The UIC's most important goal is to ensure Jamaica has good governance. So you're going to find us laser focused. Good governance affects everything from your police to your economy to your education, all of these things. So good governance. So when we are elected, you're going to find us balancing the priorities of the day-to-day and trying to get us to a new system of governance with a new constitution to ensure proper checks and balances. So day-to-day, we will have the immediate issues of crime and violence to address right away in terms of immediate actions. You would have things like the grassroots economy that we want to make sure we build so that we stop having the oppression of our small businessmen and women and the oppression of our microeconomy and really unleashing that with immediate policy. And while doing that, leading Jamaica to embrace, to enforce, to entrench a new constitution that will ensure proper separation of power, proper checks and balances, good governance to eliminate corruption so that more money can flow into the productive sector and into delivering the services Jamaicans need as opposed to continuing to feed corruption.
Thank you, Mr. President. So again, the Javon Wilson, reach out to the UIC and we'll talk some more. All right? Ultimate corrupts. I think this person said ultimate power corrupts. A total new party is necessary necessary by whatever means. And DUIC is definitely that. DUIC is the only registered party that is not part of the former colonial power structure. Okay? So let's know that DUIC is different, new in every respect. Brand shining, spanking new.
What is our take on BRICS? Lovely question.
Yeah, I
So,
do.
so BRICS stands for, let me see if I remember, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Okay.
Yes.
So these are the countries that have come together to form an alternative to the Western banking system. As you know, the Western banking system is really a weapon designed to manipulate and control other countries. And so the BRICS countries are going against that, and rightly so. They're doing a right thing to counterbalance that. But I have to warn us to be careful that we don't jump out of the frying pan into the fire, because the BRICS countries, you know, the leadership of those countries also have their intentions as well, right? So you don't want to end up leaving one, embracing the other without ensuring that you put in place proper checks and balances to protect against just creating another form of the same thing. It's like, for example, let's say other third parties come up in Jamaica. You have to examine them carefully. What are they really taking you to? So one might come up and they might tell you all the things you like to hear, but they're really not preaching true reforms, right? So they can tell you free education, free healthcare, free housing, or whatever, and it sounds nice. And then let's say you vote for them, but you never get a true certainty that they were going to put in place good governance. So now you've jumped out of one set of evil and you're in another set of evil. I don't trust any country that does not believe in individual freedom and protecting the sovereignty of their citizens. So if I'm going into an association with a country that doesn't believes in protecting individual rights, I'm going to be wary of that. So while I'm happy for a counterbalance to the Western system, I also want to be cautious and be pragmatic in how I formulate my engagement with the others who are, proposing something else.
Definitely. And also the thing to point out about BRICS is this. It is an extension of the Cold War system fighting against the petrodollar and the banking cartel. So they're not 100% noble, even though they offer an alternative. And if they are to succeed in their efforts, and let me not use a strong term here, to hell with it, and they ruin the petrodollar, it means that all our sovereign debts nominated in that currency just evaporated. So I for one, I'm very pleased just to see that taking place. I'm hoping my kids don't owe trillions of dollars in illicit and immoral and illegal debt. So I have to put that out there.
Yeah, there will be a number of consequences. I mean, if we fully understand the economics behind all of this, I mean, I want to see a destruction of the Bretton Woods system completely. It's wrong. It's immoral. You should never have any currency, any national currency, having the status of reserve currency and the ability to print unlimited amounts of that money and push it into the market and undervalue and devalue other countries' currency and so on. Like Jamaica, for example, every time we borrow money, we're devaluing our currency here because we're borrowing unnecessarily and excessively and not for true production. But that's another story. But any other question, Mr. Chairman, before we wrap it up in 2 minutes?
Yes, there's a question from Roundtable Talk TV. I'm not in Jamaica, but are there UIC candidates in their constituencies on the ground?
Okay. Well, of course. Yeah, we're on the ground, and again, remember, we're on the ground, and we're limited by number of factors. But yeah, man, Winston Wright over there in Eastern Westmoreland. I'm here in Northeast St. Elizabeth. Dr. Coretta over there in East Rural St. Andrew. Vincent Crawford over there in Northwestern Manchester. Mr. Barnett down there in central Kingston. So, we have persons in their constituencies working. You don't remember, the news doesn't carry us. Okay? The news doesn't carry us. So it does take a bit of work. The other day I had VP Powell over here in Portland. All the misery she saw and reported to us and created a little TikTok out of it and so on. Again, that doesn't get carried on the news. You don't hear news flash, UIC VP, Jasmine Powell walked the streets of Portland today, and these are the stuff that she spoke about, the people she spoke to. You don't hear that. If one of the other two parties barely just pass through the air, it's going to be fully reported, and you're going to see them on the TV talking, right? So let's understand the war we're fighting and what we're doing. Quick thing, somebody said earlier on, I don't remember where it is now, but they mentioned they said I'm very eloquent, but I need to speak the language of the Jamaican people in order to connect with them. What is your take on that, Mr. Chairman?
I saw that question and I wanted to ask the person, what is it you think the president needs to do to have his delivery connect with the people? And my reason for asking it is simply this. I am a believer in bringing people up to a greater standard, not dumbing down to theirs. Right? So your eloquence is not a problem for me. It encourages me to learn and refine my delivery. Right? And connecting with the people has nothing to do with eloquence, but rather sincerity. And that is obvious that you connect to the people, and it's obvious that your sincerity is there. In my professional life, when I mentor my team members, I mentor them to be better than me, to teach me things, because I want to be challenged to continue growing as a professional. So your delivery is fine, Mr. President. Your connection with the people remains strong.
I find when I talk to people, in my constituency and so on, people understand me very clearly. And the reason why the UIC has grown is because we have connected with people and, explain. I've had persons who have interviewed me and said, Mr. President, would you cuss a bad word? And would you use some colorful, and he says, not bad word, it's just all way of talking or whatever. And I said to him, I have no problem with a person choosing to speak that way, but I don't see the need. I don't need that help to communicate. So for me, I don't find that I need to do that to communicate. Now, somebody else might believe that in order for them to get their point across, they do need to use those choice words. And that's fine. That's your choice. But don't impose your choice on me. I don't need it to communicate. So I'm okay, with that. I see some important and some interesting commentary here.
Yes. Firstly, just to clarify for the person, they roll out the screen now. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you're saying keep the US dollar.
Correct. Yes.
You're not saying that.
No.
You're saying be careful how we embrace another world system. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. I'm not in favor of keeping the US. As a matter of fact, let me be very clear. If the UIC forms the government, or when the UIC forms the government, you're going to find that we're going to adopt a new monetary policy. Our monetary policy will be, for the first time in the history of Jamaica, we're going to have real money, no longer a currency-based system. So our money will become real. It will be backed by productivity and no longer something pegged, which we are in an indirect way, to the US dollar. Secondarily, we're not going to borrow the way we borrow now. We're going to use no longer private borrowing at interest from the private banking system. We're going to go back to a real central bank system where the government of Jamaica is able to print the money it needs in tandem with production. So we're not going to have this excessive private borrowing and interest. If we have to borrow for major projects, it will be now timed to be fully funded by the productivity increases from that spending, as opposed to just spending for politics and then, having that watered down our monetary supply. Right.
Let's start from the bottom since they're rolling off.
Yeah.
answering that question, which was good, rolled off, and I can't remember it. Javon, again, my brother, you're inferring what the UIC has not said, what any of us have not said. This has nothing to do with uptown or downtown. What we're talking about is a busy set of people who don't have time for frivolity or the consequences of indulging persons for the sake of indulgence. Right? Anything we're doing has to be structured and endorsed by the national executive, and it has to be meaningful to the people of Jamaica and advance the movement.
Oh, yeah. It's Mr. Chairman, it's hardly even worth the explanation. It's just simple. I mean, we go everywhere. The UIC has been downtown, Halfway Tree, Manchester, Clarendon, Maypen, Mandeville, Santa Cruz, everywhere. So we're not the question, I'm not sure what the purpose of the question is really. The bottom line is we will go anywhere we need to go when we need to go there, right? Any part of Jamaica. So that's the bottom line.
A gentleman for the truth that rolled off the screen, we appreciate what you do when you do. Just know that from the bottom of our hearts, for the work that we do, whenever you find it to donate, it is appreciated and it is used with the utmost care. Thank you for donating. Thank you for spending time with us. And keep sharing our message. Keep sharing our ideas. Keep sharing our content. That is just as good.
I would love you to have a show on Bitcoin, how it may be the most practical way for poor people in any country becoming financially empowered. I have done some talks on Bitcoin before, and what shall I say? Bitcoin is another form of trading. I don't want to use the word money or currency because they have very specific names. I cannot be a big promoter or discounter of Bitcoin. I just see it for what it really is. Bitcoin, is another product. It's not working very well as money or as a currency because people are not using it for daily, regular trading. It's obviously something which has been attacked by the powers that be from one side or the other, either to undermine it as a tool for which it could be, a monetary tool for which it could be, or it was a form of bait and switch. So there are all kinds of things going on. People have made money, people have lost money. It is unclear which direction it will go in the end. My personal predictions so far have all fallen suit. I predicted back in the day that it would be regulated by government, it would be taxed by government. So they made it into an asset class, which they taxed. It would not be allowed to become regular exchange, which has been the case. It has become a speculative tool as well, which has also been the case. It has turned out to be a form of investment gamble. These are all things I predicted back in the day when it was still an exciting opportunity. So today it has lived out for all the things I have predicted. So I can't sell it the way that maybe you'd like me to sell it. I would be very unprofessional, knowing what I know, to be able to sell it to you that way. So I have to be very cautious, be very careful. Try to look at the intrinsic nature of the product and not the sales pitch of the product, just the intrinsic nature. What's really happening here? Who stands to gain, when, why, and how? How will the legal system respond to it? And the legal system is controlled by the government and those who control the government. And of course, the banking sector is a big funder of governments globally. So you can get your cue as to where any product is going when it conflicts with the banking sector and those who fund the politicians. Because overnight, something that you take for granted, somebody can say it's illegal, just overnight. Like, for example, back in the 1970s, they made it illegal for you to have gold, right, to own gold in the US environment, right? And overnight, they also severed the gold backing of the US dollar. So you can't trust governments when they're not tempered by a constitution that protects your rights from them. And that's why the UIC is so big on giving you a constitution that would protect you from government. So no government, for example, should be able to get up and say, you can't own gold. or 1 minute they're going to peg your dollar to gold, and the next minute they're going to sever the link between it and put you at risk the way that they've done, over the last 50 years, right? So please be careful about how you sell any new venture, be it BRICS or Bitcoin or any other grandiose invention. Go to the core of it. Does this protect my individual rights or not? Is my individual sovereignty intact or not? And no matter how nice it sounds, look at the player. Is the player one that respects individual liberty? If not, don't trust their product or what they're proposing.
There was a question about representative in Clarendon. Do we have a representative in Clarendon? We are rebuilding in Clarendon. We don't have a candidate in Clarendon, but we're open. So if you know someone, again, at Eunice Brown Knight, if you know someone, have them send your applications in.
Yeah.
Right?
And
We
please,
have to review.
every single constituency we welcome candidates for, even in my constituency. All of us must be challenged. So if you know somebody, for example, in Northeast St. Elizabeth, who you think would be a good candidate for MP or for councillor for Balaclava or councillor for Breeze River or for Santa Cruz or for for Shiloh, please bring them forward. I would love to see a runoff in each of our constituency where,
Definitely.
we have 2 or 3 UIC candidates competing for each seat, and we have a runoff election where the members vote on who of the 2 or 3 or 4 persons they think should represent that constituency. So don't be afraid. Nominate somebody. For example, even the presidency of the UIC, and I've said this before, right? I don't know why people feel they have to attack and fight and backstab when all they have to do is just join the movement, prove themselves worthy, and offer themselves to be elected by the members. Why damage an organization? Why cry it down and tear it down? Why not just do your job? If you are elected chairman, or you're elected general secretary, or you're elected treasurer, or you're elected VP, just do your job, perform in your role, and then offer yourself. And look how well I performed as general secretary. I think I'll be a good president. I want to run for president of the UIC this year. Or look at me, I did a good job as chairman, or treasurer, or VP, whatever, or director on the board, or a parish manager, or just as an MP candidate. Look at how I've done my job as a UIC representative in my area. Look at my performance, and then put your name on the ballot and run for president, as opposed to what so many persons have now tried, to come in, to undermine, to tear down, stab in the back, and see if they can somehow usurp the presidency. Don't usurp the presidency. Win the presidency ethically, morally, and responsibly, and stop playing games with the Jamaican people and creating more problems than you solve.
Let me follow your advice. You have never led me down the wrong path as yet. All right, so we have the current question out the way. Someone asked if you would make the program available to the ordinary Jamaican to raise questions. We've always made the programs available to ordinary Jamaicans to raise questions. When I do programs in the past, I've put my phone number up and asked for people to call me, even on WhatsApp, and they don't. Right? But we always try to take feedback. We always have the chat up, and you can always pop in and ask a question. So anybody who know have a question, and we even take direct questions. People have emailed me questions and say, hey, can you answer this question for me? So once you send a question to the UIC email or to my email, someone will reply with an answer to your question. Right? And persons have called me directly with questions because I have more free time to answer phones. So call me with your questions. We'll be happy to answer. There was another question.
As for Corporal Roll, James, the UIC stands with him 100% in his fight for fair treatment of police officers. There's no reason at all why the government should not be held to the same account that it holds us, the people. When we fail to pay our taxes, they come down heavy on us. When we breach any of their rules, they come down heavy on us. The government needs to pay up the back money, pay up the overtime that they owe to the police officers, and start treating the police officers professionally. If you want them to be professionals, treat them like professionals. Pay them accordingly and pay them what you owe them. You can't ask them to work overtime and not get paid. The pay they're getting is already below what they need to take care of their families properly. So don't deny them further by asking them to work without pay. So we stand with Corporal Rural James on that front, and it's very sad what they have done to him for speaking out. But then that is the case. Any Jamaican that stands up to the Jamaican government, they will treat with disdain and seek to undermine their personal economy any way they can. Yes.
Yeah, and Anten's reasoning clarified to say have these persons on the program. You know,
Which person?
on the program to pose question to us. We have
Which
actually
persons? Which persons?
Anten's reasoning. He
So
said
which
ordinary
persons they
Jamaicans.
want? Which persons they want on the program?
Ordinary Jamaicans.
Well, that's what we are.
But what I think he meant was, you know, non-UIC members.
But we've had that.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying, that we've had several online town halls set up with persons, and you know, they're shy, so they back out from time to time. But we do have other Jamaicans on. Earlier in the week, you had the young lady on. What's her name?
Yes, Monique King was on.
Right.
Prior to that, we had Miss Patrice Elliott was on. Tonight, we should have had Dr. K'Nife on, but he didn't show up. We have had the anti-corruption movement person on. We have had Purnell on. We have had so many different persons. The UIC is the most open, transparent, inclusive, and welcoming party Jamaica has ever seen. We are, in fact, the People's Party. You can't get any more people than this. A grassroots party. We're not going to the oligarchs and asking them to fund us and to, you know, take control of us like they've done the other parties. We're saying any Jamaican that want to see the change, you're free to join, volunteer, and donate so that we can rescue our nation. That's all we ask. If you want what we're offering, a Jamaica that will protect your individual sovereignty, a Jamaica that will protect the right to your life, liberty, and property, a Jamaica that will be safe, clean, and orderly, a Jamaica where every Jamaican can live, earn, and retire with dignity. If that's the Jamaica you want, the UIC is here to give it to you. And the only way we can give it to you is if you, like us, play your part in advancing the welfare of your nation by joining, volunteering, and donating.
And what I would like to say is, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I said it earlier, by the way, to the person that mentioned that as a question. I thank you for the suggestion, but it's something we always do. I know when I'm guessing you're new to the channel, so you're not seeing that. We always ask that you like, share, and subscribe.
Exactly.
So please do that. Now, in terms of strengthening the Jamaican dollar silver cat, we absolutely believe in strengthening the Jamaican dollar. And that is why we don't believe in deficit spending from a budgetary standpoint. We definitely don't believe in the banking system that exists because of how it moves money and control currency. Right? And borrowing is definitely from a weakened position. And when you borrow from international lending agencies, the president said it earlier, they devalue your currency by virtue of using the standard petrodollar.
Every time we borrow money for non-productive purposes, meaning if you borrow $1 that is not going to earn you $1 on top of it, you're devaluing the currency for everybody else. It's a very simple economic model, and that's why Jamaica's currency continues to fall. And of course, they know that most of us don't understand this, right? But if every year you borrow more money to pay for groceries in your life.
Yeah. Here's one from John Flicks. John Flicks that you need to take. Is the UIC keeping abreast with the movement towards a fake constitution?
Absolutely. That's why we're here. That is why we're here. We're trying
Reform
to,
or replace, should
yeah,
you care.
yeah, we're trying to steer Jamaica away. You see, listen, guys, for those of you who haven't heard me said this before, in 1838, we, the people, our foreparents who didn't know what was going on, clapped and cheered a fake freedom. When the Queen of England said, the slaves are hereby free, that was fake freedom because they never gave you back your land, they never gave you back your lost wages, and you were also uneducated. So you didn't have the intellect, you didn't have the land, you didn't have the capital. So what were you free to do? You were free to go and beg a job. That's all. And so those who had the land and the capital were still in place, and you could now go beg them a job. So you're really a slave. You just get to choose who will be a master now. You can, instead of being bought and owned by Master X, you can choose whether you're going to go to Master X or Master Y, but you're still a slave. Now, that was fake freedom in 1838. Then, after over 100 years of that, when we finally realized something wrong and we started to rebel, they gave us fake democracy in 1944, where they said, listen, let's fool them up again, give them the right to vote now. But first, let's create for them two fake parties after kicking out Marcus Garvey. Again, we clapped and cheered because we didn't understand. So we thought that they were giving us something good when it was really just something fake. The right to vote for who they give you to vote for. So they will control the voting process, they will control the nominees, and then tell you you have the right to vote and give you two fake options. It's called controlled opposition. So we clapped and cheered. After 18 years of that, the system was perfected. We have now taken our eyes off the colonial master as the enemy, and we now start to fight each other as the enemy. So in 1962 now, they gave us the ultimate fake of a fake independence to crystallize and make perfect the system. They changed the white governor to a black governor general. So a person with a black exterior but a white interior, meaning they have converted him fully to their way, but him now look like we. So there's a governor general. But above him, they put the Queen of England. So ultimately, you were still worshiping your Messiah, the slave master. And so that has gone on now for 61 years. And those who they have trained to embrace and protect that system, recognizing the rise of the UIC, quickly come back and say, we're going to give you a republic now. And so we cheer again and say, yeah, Jamaica Republic now. So your eyes again are taken off the ball. You're not seeing that the same ones who have been perpetuating the slavery, though black on the exterior, are the same ones now leading you into a fake republic. The UIC is here to say, no, we're standing up for you, but we can't stand for you if you don't work with us. It's like you going to a lawyer and saying, lawyer, them go and kill me, them go and frame me for murder and try me in a fake trial, and then them go and hang me. Help me, Mr. Lawyer. And he said, no problem, I'll represent you. How much you going to pay me to represent you? Nothing, lawyer, just represent me for free. I won't pay you anything to represent me. But you love your life, do you want to live? Yes, man, but I won't pay anything. Now, if we decide that that's the lawyer we want, the lawyer where we don't give them any funds to represent us, but the opposition, those who are against us, are well backed and well funded to ensure that we go to the gallows, and that's where we're going to end up. As I said before, the Prime Minister, I hate to agree with him, but you get what you're paid for. He was using that in a wrong way. He's using it to validate the 200% and 300% increase that he tried to give, which he has given the parliamentarians and others. What we're saying is what Lee Kuan Yew meant when he says you get what you pay for. We, the people, must own and pay for our party, because if we don't, the PSOJ oligarchs will continue to pay for and own their party that will represent them, and they will not represent you.
All right, so we have 6 minutes left. There are 2 questions from Silver Cat. Let's start with the BOJ. I believe that he should step down. He made a grievous error in judgment. There is duplicity and even confusion in his language. But guess what? We can't get him to do that. There's no process to do that. The government who can get him to do that don't represent us. That's why we need a UIC government with a constitution that allows us to recall public officials.
Remember,
That's what we need.
the BOJ is independent.
Yeah, we did a program on that when we warned the people about the government plan to move the BOJ from representing the people. The
Yeah, we told
BOJ is
you.
now a separate entity making financial decisions for the people of Jamaica.
While
No,
being independent.
why being independent? But guess what? They're not really independent. They're just no longer under the control of the people. But if they're no longer under the control of the people, who controls them?
Absolutely. They're independent of the people by
But yeah,
making them independent of the government, because we're supposedly to have elected the government, supposedly. It's only 21% of us who were bought to vote for them, to authenticate them. My friends, the electoral process is designed to give legitimacy to a corrupt system. Okay? So it's corruption, and you have been conned, we have been conned into legitimizing it. So now that legitimized fraud has made your banking system, your central bank, independent of itself by voting and funding it to be independent of it, which means it's independent of you. And so some other forces are controlling your central bank. So the government now is not in a position to fully carry out your intentions when it comes on to your central bank, which is manipulating the value of your currency and the interest rate that you pay on your mortgage and your other debts, which is just unbelievable. And they call it a free market economy. You can't have a free market economy when somebody controls interest rate and controls the value of your money. That's a controlled economy, but they've tricked us into saying it's free market. But my friends, we have come to the end of our conversation. I wish we could answer some more questions, but be it resolved that the UIC is committed to the replacement and not the reform of the colonial constitution. We want you to have a constitution which is designed by the people, for the people, and must be of the people. A constitution that protects your right to your life, liberty, and property, one that limits governments, one which ensures that you cannot be overtaxed and you cannot have government overreach to violate your rights, one where every child will receive the nutrition, education, healthcare, and housing they need to succeed. One where your right to your familial land, the land of your ancestors, will be honored by your government and protected from usury and from all forms of extortion in the form of perpetual property taxes. Mr. Chairman, your final thoughts.
Jamflix, we don't agree with any points of the reform. Again, a new constitution written for Jamaicans by Jamaicans. No reform. We cannot reform something that is flawed down to its DNA.
Absolutely.
We have to replace it. That is where the UIC stands. So, reform or replace. I am for replacing, and I heard the president say it.
Absolutely. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. And remember, One Jamaica, we're stronger together. Like, share, subscribe, and comment. And by the way, it's always nice for you to tell us how you rate the program. It's a tradition of us now, where we ask you to rate the program. So give us 100% if we're excellent.
See, Kurt is already
1% if we're horrible, 50% if we're so-so, or whatever other number. But rate the program, tell us how we're doing. And please, we need your donations. There's no way for us to work without you. I want 1,000 of you to give $25 a month. If you can only give $5, give it. $10, give it. $100, give it. But at least we want 1,000 persons giving 25. With that, we can reach every nook and cranny in Jamaica. Believe it or not, as small as it is, $25 can help us to reach many Jamaicans. So rate the program, 100% if we're great, and some of the number below that if we're not so great. Take care, have a good night, and remember, One Jamaica.
stronger together.
Have a good night.
That's the reasoning. You have our email address. Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Take
Mr.
care.
President. A good night to you, and a good night to all viewers. Again, like, share, and subscribe. See you next broadcast.